Welcome back to Old School Epics. My name's Will, and this channel is dedicated to chronicling the stories that emerge from actual playthroughs of official adventure scenarios for the Old School Essentials advanced fantasy role-playing game by Necrotic Gnome. If you're new to the channel, the format is similar to an actual play podcast, but without mechanics or table talk. Basically, I referee and play through adventure scenarios per the rules of Old School Essentials, and then chronicle those adventures into short stories, such as the one you're about to hear. While it may be helpful to listen to this foreword, it's not, strictly speaking, necessary. The foreword is just a place to provide a bit of the behind-the-scenes information in which some listeners might be interested, along with an update or two from the previous adventure. If you'd like to skip this foreword and get straight to the adventure, click Prologue in the video index below. For this adventure, I used map effects assets to make the map and Owlbear Rodeo as my virtual tabletop. Links to both are in the description below. Just like last time, I'll reveal the map as our player characters explore the dungeon so that you can reference it should my descriptions of play become confusing. While our stories are intended to be heard and not watched, the events of Shrine of the Oozing Serpent are significantly less linear than those of the Jeweler's Sanctum. Therefore, referencing the map as you listen may be helpful. Shrine of the Oozing Serpent is also a markedly longer story than the Jeweler's Sanctum, at nearly 4 hours all in. It includes a sort of wilderness exploration piece at the beginning and is a slightly more complex dungeon. So, based on a poll we did a while back, I've indexed the adventure into 12 chapters to make it easier for you to leave and come back if you'd like. Believe it or not, I completed playing through, writing, and editing Shrine of the Oozing Serpent much faster than I anticipate completing future adventures. That's because I had played through and written most of it before I even decided to give this little channel a try. Consequently, I've only had to work on editing. I do a whole lot of editing and rewriting, and voicing it in the past couple of months. If I had to guess, I'd say I'm looking at about 4 to 6 months between stories in general. This brings me to narrating. Because Shrine of the Oozing Serpent is nearly double the length of the Jeweler's Sanctum, and because I was ready to voice it just after we'd published the Jeweler's Sanctum, I couldn't afford a professional narrator this time. Therefore, I've voiced the story with 11 Labs, but worry not. Janine Howe will be voicing Adventure 3, Barrow of the Bone Blackguards. Hopefully after that, I will have gotten my own voiceover ability to where she and I can voice the next one together. In any event, the voices I used are professional actors and they get paid for their time, and, all things considered, I think the quality is pretty good. I hope you'll think so too, and, if not, that you'll hang in there with us until Adventure 3 when I can have Janine back. The good news is that I've been able to budget a little bit more for artwork and have commissioned about a dozen different pieces from about half a dozen different OSR artists for Shrine of the Oozing Serpent. These include Yuri Perkowski-Domingos, Del Tigler, Justin Sorois, Justin, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, and a few other talented artists, all of whom have been a pleasure to work with. There are 12 chapters in the adventure, and we've done one piece for each chapter. I'll list the artist for each chapter and links to their portfolios in the description below. Finally, there's the matter of the treasure and experience points the party obtained in the last adventure. Upon completing the Jeweler's Sanctum, our 5-player characters earned a total of about 7,600 experience points, or roughly 1,500 experience points per character. This was enough for 2 of them, Elwyn the Cleric and Yari the Thief, to reach 2nd level. Brief updates for all characters are given in the prologue to this adventure. The player characters also recovered quite a bit of non-magical and magical treasure. Descriptions of the non-magical treasure were already given in the adventure itself, but I'll provide Giuseppe Rotondo's official descriptions of the magical treasure here. Angharad collected all of the magical treasure and has been researching it, though she may not yet have learned everything there is to know about every item. The treasure she collected is as follows for those of you who are up to speed on the various details and rules of Old School Essentials. Morland's Marvelous Magic, a spellbook containing the spells Sleep and Light, the former of which Angharad is now added to her own spellbook. Tome of Black and White Doom, Bound in checkered patches of white unicorn fur and black warp beast fur, it halves the cost of creating magical checkerboard floor traps. A crystal crucible, a small crystal cup, wondrously faceted and engraved with magical sigils, which halves the cost of creating magical rings and amulets. The silver spinner, a small instrument for weaving metal which halves the chance of failure when creating magical rings and amulets. Tome of looping enchantments, bound in scintillating genie skin. When used in conjunction with the crystal crucible and the silver spinner, it allows a character of any level to create magical rings and amulets, but it has a 50% chance of resulting in a cursed item. Jade medallion engraved with a letter D, used to bypass the iron statues in Draxus's enchantment workshop in the jeweler's sanctum. A spell scroll inscribed with the Fireball spell. Glove of curse detection. A purple silk glove with embroidered rings around the fingers that whimpers if the wearer puts on a cursed ring while wearing it, and allows a cursed ring to be removed safely, but has a 1 in 6 chance per use of crumbling to dust. Finally, the Ruby Ring of Fire Resistance. Its wearer is immune to damage from non-magical fire and has a +2 bonus to saving throws versus fire-based magical or breath attacks. This type of fire-based damage is reduced by 1 point per damage die rolled, though each die still inflicts a minimum of 1 hit point of damage. Well, that should do it for the foreword. We hope you enjoy Adventure 2, Shrine of the Oozing Serpent. If you do, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and share our stories with anyone you know who likes listening to fantasy adventure epics. Now, with all of that out of the way, and to quote Akira the Wizard, let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Adventure 2, Shrine of the Oozing Serpent. An actual play chronicle for the Old School Essentials Advanced Fantasy Role-Playing Game by Necrotic Gnome. Adventure scenario by Nate Treme, as published in Adventure Anthology 2. Described and edited by William O'Bradesley. Read by David et al., 11 Labs. Introduction. Excerpt by Nate Treme, Adventure Anthology 2. The local duke is offering a reward, 600 gold pieces, a cart, and 2 draft horses, as payment for the slaying of whatever creature it is that has made the nearby King's Road unsafe. Where the road passes along the KELFREK marsh, multiple travelers have gone missing. Nearby homesteaders claim to have seen a large shape slithering through the marsh, leaving trails of black grease in its wake. These trails lead to the ruined gnomish shrine of MULVIS, built into the cliffs on the other side of the marsh. A decade ago, SOOTMURK, the legendary grease dragon, destroyed the shrine. Unseen since then, could she now have returned? Player characters. In light of their success at the jeweler's sanctum, the player characters have agreed to reconvene at a local tavern on the first full moon of spring to consider further adventures together. In the interim, they've each pursued their individual ends, selling and storing treasure, seeing to personal affairs, and the like. Angarad the Medium. Still first level, she's about halfway to second level following the last adventure. After the jeweler's sanctum, she spent most of her time researching and identifying the magic items the party collected, the details of which are discussed in the foreword to this adventure. The following spells are now in her spellbook. Since she's still first level, she can still only remember one of these spells per day. Detect Magic, Light, Read Magic, Read Languages, Shield, and Sleep. Elwyn the Adept. Having reached second level, her title is now Adept. After the jeweler's sanctum, she reported back to the Divine Order of Law and has proven herself worthy to her deity. She can now cast 1 first-level divine spell per day. She must meditate in the morning to memorize it. She used some of the treasure she recovered from the jeweler's sanctum to purchase plate mail armor and sold her chainmail armor. She still wears the diamond ring she found in the jeweler's sanctum on her right ring finger. It matches the one worn by Owen. Owen the Squire. Still first level, He's about halfway to second level following the last adventure. After the jeweler's sanctum, he returned to his squirely duties. He still wears the diamond ring he found in the jeweler's sanctum on his right ring finger. It matches the one worn by Elwyn. Yari the Footpad. Having reached second level, his title is now Footpad. After the jeweler's sanctum, he returned Oryx's body to his clan. Oryx's father, Yari's uncle, permitted Yari to keep Oryx's clan medallion and hand axe. Torish the Hunter. Still first level, he's about halfway to second level following the last adventure. After the jeweler's sanctum, he spent most of his time, and more than a little bit of his money, carousing with girls, drinking, singing, and brawling in various taverns. Day 0. In honor of the agreement into which they entered following the jeweler's sanctum, all 5 characters have congregated at a small public house called the Three-Legged Mule, under the silver light of spring's first full moon. The night outside the little inn is chill and crisp, but the setting within is welcoming and warm. Patrons chatter and mugs clatter in the homely glow of a well-tended hearth. The adventurers sit gathered about a table, sharing news of their respective endeavors over the preceding weeks. Angarad relays the information she's been able to glean about the magical treasures the party collected in Draxus's workshop. Yari describes the days spent with his clan and the somber task of laying Oryx to barrow. Torish boasts about his exploits at leisure in short tales punctuated with booming laughter. But the center of the conversation is Elwyn, resplendent in her new plate mail armor. Her temple elders have granted her the title of Adept, as she has proven herself worthy of casting spells. Owen raises his mug, looking around at his companions.
It's fine indeed to see you all again. I have news that might interest you. Duke Ganelon, liege lord of my liege lord, is offering a reward for the slaying of whatever creature it is that's been terrorizing the King's Road near the KELFREK marsh. 600 gold pieces, a cart, and 2 draft horses. The monster is said to be a slithering beast that devours travellers and leaves trails of black soot in its wake. A ranger from the White League is rumoured to have tracked it to the cliffs deep within the marsh, near the site of an old ruins called the Shrine of MULVIS.
Angarad's features sharpen in piqued curiosity.
The Shrine of MULVIS? If memory serves, that was the temple of a gnomish heretical cult. It was rumoured to have been destroyed by the legendary grease dragon SOOTMURK. Perhaps she has returned?
Yari looks grave.
A dragon? As in a flying, fire-breathing monster?
Angarad shakes her head.
I'm not sure, but I don't think so. There are other, lesser varieties of worm that call themselves dragons. I can't be certain, but I believe SOOTMURK may have been, or rather, may be, of the lesser variety. It certainly stands to reason that a monster called a grease dragon might leave trails of soot in its wake. In any event, the shrine may hold ancient knowledge or magical artifacts. I'm intrigued by the possibilities.
Elwyn listens intently before speaking.
It sounds like a noble cause. If we can help make the roads safer and bring peace to the area, I'm for it. Besides, the shrine might hold secrets worth uncovering. It could be another opportunity to prove myself to the divine order.
Yari strokes his beard thoughtfully.
The reward sounds generous, and there might be treasures in that shrine that are worth our while.
Torish considers for a moment before smiling.
A large quarry that leaves a trail of soot in its wake. Sounds like an easy hunt to me. If there are traces of it along the King's Road, I should be able to track them to the cliffs.
With everyone in agreement, the group spends the rest of the evening discussing their plans. Torish reckons that the cliffs lay about a day's travel through the KELFREK marsh. He recommends that the party leave early in the morning if they hope to reach it by nightfall tomorrow. One by one, the adventurers retire to their respective quarters to rest and prepare for their new adventure. Chapter 1. The KELFREK Marsh. Day 1. Morning. At daybreak, the adventurers gather their gear and prepare to set off from the Three-Legged Mule. The morning is crisp, dewy, and laden with the earthy scents of spring.
We'll have an easy hour along the road to reach the marsh and the rest of the day. traveling through it,
prognosticates Tarish as he pulls his cracked-horned helmet over shaggy chestnut hair. His sword hangs lazily at his hip, and undaunted as the barbarian is by the chill of dawn, his sleeveless scale-mail hauberk brandishes muscular arms. His hide shield and pair of javelins are slung across his back.
I'll take the rear guard,
volunteers Owen, donning his own helmet. The squire's armor is as fastidiously polished as ever, as are his sword and shield.
I've prayed for the ability to heal,
says Elwyn.
If any of us are injured, I can provide aid with cure light wounds.
There's something both solemn and proud about these proclamations that causes the young cleric's companions to regard her with a collective smile. Though she's still unaccustomed to it, her new plate mail shines in testament to her increasing esteem within the divine order. A veritable mane of black hair spills out from beneath her helmet to rest on her sabatons. She wears her shield on her back, along with the slender mace that she has never yet drawn in battle.
And I've memorized the sleep spell,
says Angarad with an impish smirk.
It's a powerful enchantment, as we can all attest.
Adorned in the same embroidered green robes she wore into the jeweler's sanctum, the elf's thick golden hair is bound into a single braid that reaches nearly to her waist. Her wizard's staff, as it were, remains but a simple ash-quarter staff a little taller than she is. The general mood of the party being light and optimistic, Yari alone seems unsettled by the proposition of trudging through the wilderness of the KELFREK marsh.
We'll have to keep an eye out for anything unusual,
he says gloomily from beneath the cowl of his hooded cloak, which casts his dark features in opaque shadow.
These moors are known for more dangers than just this slithering creature.
His trusty crossbow and bolt case are tethered to his backpack, and Oryx's handaxe hangs at his hip. His dagger is tucked into his boot. Once all buckles, belts, boots, and backpacks have been duly fiddled and refiddled with, the party embarks north along the King's Road. It's a broad strand of packed earth and pavers, well-trodden and well-maintained in this small region of the world. The group walks easily for the better part of an hour before wetlands begin to form on the road's eastern flank. Tarish scans the ground for traces of the black soot the homesteaders are said to have described. Sure enough, by mid-morning, he finds a broken trail of it leading east into the marsh. With Tarish still in the lead, the party moves carefully into the wetlands. The ground quickly becomes soft, and the air is thick with natural decay, newly released from the grip of winter. Day 1, midday. Morning yields to noon. Wetland grasses and marsh marigolds predominate the edges of the moor. The ground is soggy and hard to traverse, especially for Elwyn and Owen in their plate mail armor. Angarad soon finds the hem of her robes soaked through, and she stops for a space to slit them from ankle to hip with Yari's dagger. The wet conditions make tracking the soot trail difficult as well. It's early afternoon when the party nears the wooded interior of the marsh, where willows and birch trees grow tall and strong.
The ground is spongy,
pants Elwyn, trying to stay positive but wincing as her plate-mailed boots sink into the soggy earth.
We need to be careful not to get stuck.
Agreed,
says Owen between heavy breaths, as he and the cleric help each other navigate the bog.
This marsh is more treacherous than I anticipated.
Tarish, who moves over the wild terrain with an efficiency found only among barbarians and beasts, looks back at the others.
Stay close and try to step where I step.
Yari, a son of stone unaccustomed to traversing any kind of woodland, flicks his dark eyes about nervously.
Stay watchful. The trees ahead will provide some cover, but they might also hide dangers.
With her robes now properly tailored, and with the aid of her staff, Angarad can cross the treacherous ground with relative grace.
Almost there. Once we reach the trees, we'll find firmer ground.
The elf's prediction proves true as the party enters the wooded interior of the marsh. Willows, birches, and alders grow happily here with root systems that form a natural sieve around which millennia of dry dirt have collected. The group gathers on a cool lawn of moss under the early spring canopy of budding branches. Tarish spots the sooty black trail winding its way east with more distinction.
This is better.
Sighs Owen gratefully as he steps onto solid ground. Elwyn, still adjusting the various straps of her new armor, nods vigorously as she rests her back against the papery white bark of a birch tree.
Yes, let's take a moment to gather our bearings, shall we?
Tarish smiles patiently at his civilized companions.
All right. We'll rest here for a moment and then continue tracking the soot trail. We're getting closer.
As the adventurers sit scattered about, drinking water and eating rations, the sharp ears of Angarad and Tarish detect a ghostly chanting from deeper within the deciduous marshlands.
Do you hear that?
Angarad whispers.
It's some sort of chanting.
I hear it too.
Tarish confirms with a furrowed brow.
It's faint, but it's there.
The others pause, straining to listen. The chanting grows more distinct, and soon everyone can hear it.
What do you think it could be?
Wonders Elwyn with wide silver eyes. Yari removes his cowl and cocks his ear.
It sounds like gnomish to me, Angarad.
Angarad nods.
Yes, it does, but I can't quite make out the words. It might be some sort of ritual or prayer.
Owen removes his helmet so he can hear better.
If it's a religious chant, could it be connected to the shrine of MULVIS?
Angarad looks thoughtful.
According to legend, the shrine of MULVIS was destroyed by the grease dragon, SOOTMURK, whom we now stalk. This chanting might be linked to the shrine or to whatever has taken up residence there.
Tarish's hunter instincts urge him toward the sound.
Let's move closer, but quietly. We don't want to alert whatever is making that noise.
The adventurers stand, pack their rations, and follow the sooty trail eastward toward the chanting, keeping their movements as quiet as they can. The firm ground once again gives way to wetlands, and soon all 5 adventurers are wading through knee-deep bog water. Each step becomes an exhausting slog for everyone but Tarish, whose life in the wilds makes the going easier.
I need to train more in this armor,
Admits the normally optimistic Elwyn, struggling to keep her balance in her cumbersome plate mail. No sooner has she made the confession than her foot gets stuck in the mud beneath the black water. She falls fully into the marsh with a splash. Muddy water engulfs her completely. She struggles to rise, but the weight of her armor is too much. Tarish moves quickly to her side and grabs the flailing girl by the straps of her breastplate. With a powerful heave, he hauls her upright.
Elwyn!
Shouts Owen.
Are you all right?
I'm fine.
The bedraggled adept replies with a smile, trying to shake off the bog water like a near-drowned puppy.
Just embarrassed.
Borrowing Yari's dagger once again, Angarad kneels at the girl's side and slits her tartan skirts from hem to hip in similar fashion to her own robes.
There, that should make you a bit more mobile.
Yari, too, struggles in these unfamiliar conditions, finding that he must pick his way from root to root so as not to fall in water above his head. While the group inches its way eastward, the chanting slowly fades until it's gone, altogether. Day 1, evening. As the party presses on, the skeletal canopy of willow, birch, and alder branches thickens, making it difficult to see the cliffs ahead. Shadows deepen as twilight subsumes daylight. Fortunately, the ground begins to rise, and the adventurers once again find themselves on dry earth.
We need to find a place to camp,
Tarish commands.
Darkness falls quickly in the forest, and we don't want to be caught off guard.
The group fans out, searching for a suitable campsite. Before long, Tarish discovers the stone foundation of some long-ago sunken ruins among a grove of trees. The group meets there and sets up a makeshift camp. They clear away debris, lay out their bedrolls, and prepare for the night.
Let's set up a watch schedule,
Suggests Elwyn.
I'll take the first watch.
You need a chance to rest and dry out your gear.
Counsels Owen.
Allow me to take the first watch.
I'll take the second,
Says Angarad, before Elwyn can object.
I'll take the 3rd watch,
Adds Yari immediately thereafter.
And I'll take the last.
Tarish says, concluding the matter.
Let's get some rest and be ready for whatever comes tomorrow.
With the watch schedule set, the adventurers settle down for the night. They eat a simple meal, build no fire, and share quiet conversation as the darkness deepens around them. Elwyn takes extra care to dry off and rest. Pale moonlight shines through the trees, creating a serene, if eerie, atmosphere. Peepers trill their springtime reprise, and distant marsh birds hoot and gossip at each other in the dark. Owen takes up a position on the outskirts of the camp. Elwyn watches him with a touch of admiration. Trained for a lifetime in heavy armor, the stoic young squire stands as still as the iron statues in Draxus's workshop, a burnished sentinel in the night. Day 1. Night. Owen's watch passes without incident, and, by the end of it, he is secretly exhausted.
Clearly the KELFREK marsh does not suffer plate mail gladly,
he says to himself before gently waking Angarad to replace him. Halfway through her watch, the elf spots a glowing green mist to the south. At first she thinks it may be something like swamp gas, but it glows too brightly. She stays still and watches it intently as it drifts east. When it suddenly disappears with a crackling sound like electric current, she feels a shiver run down her spine. The medium continues her watch with senses on high alert, scanning the surroundings for any signs of movement or other strange phenomena. As the hours pass, she reflects on what she has seen, considering the possibilities. When her watch ends, she wakes Yari for his turn.
Keep an eye out to the south,
she whispers to the dwarf.
I saw a strange green mist earlier. It glowed brightly and disappeared with a crackling sound.
A green mist?
Yari looks alarmed.
Yes, it drifted toward the cliffs before it vanished.
The elf warns.
Be cautious.
Yari nods, taking his position as Angarad settles down to rest. His sharp eyes and ears are alert, though his mind lingers on the elf's warning as he watches the night for any signs of danger. Restless, he decides to patrol the area around camp. He is altogether unaccustomed to forests, let alone forested wetlands. Moreover, the bright light of the full moon renders his infravision useless. In that light, though, he spots a humanoid shape that seems to slide up out of the marsh beyond the trees and make its way toward camp. The dwarf then sees another to the west and another to the east. Moving about in the shadows, Yari makes a quick circle around the camp. He counts a total of 5 humanoid shapes creeping ponderously toward the camp in a tightening circle. They're a little taller than Yari, have toad-like heads and limbs, and carry primitive spears leveled in a hunting position. The thief's heart races as he processes the situation. He silently circles back to the camp, flitting among the shadows so as not to alert the approaching creatures. Once he reaches Tarish, he hastily jostles the warrior.
Tarish, wake up!
Yari urgently whispers.
We're surrounded by 5 humanoid creatures. They look like half-men, half-frogs. They're armed with spears and are closing in on us.
The barbarian awakens with the primal celerity of a sleeping cat, hearing mice in the walls.
Rouse the others,
he orders, sword already in hand. Yari moves quickly but quietly to wake Owen, Angarad, and Elwyn. The companions hastily ready their weapons, forming a defensive circle among the old stone ruins. Angarad, holding her quarterstaff, stays in the center, ready to cast her sleep spell if necessary.
Stay close in this circle,
commands Tarish. Owen peers into the shadows with sword and shield raised.
Yari, can you estimate how close they are?
Maybe 20 paces out,
responds the dwarf as he cocks his crossbow. The party holds its position, scanning the moonlit surroundings for the first sign of an attack. A loud croak, as though belched from a giant bullfrog, goes up from the shadows. Another follows it, and then another. Soon the forest is a cacophony of croaking war cries that silence all natural sounds as the toadmen launch themselves forward from the darkness in great, frog-like leaps. Combat. Round 1. Yari takes aim with his crossbow, firing at the nearest hopping shadow. His bolt hits the creature mid-leap. It falls with a splash into the marsh and does not move.
One down,
Yari announces proudly, reloading his crossbow. The adventurers brace for a melee that never arrives. When their companion falls, the remaining toadmen halt where they land. A short series of croaks passes between them before they turn and spring away from the group, splashing into the marsh beyond the trees.
I think they're retreating.
Owen calls out.
Loom of light!
Breathes Elwyn.
Is everyone all right?
Looks like they had enough after Yari slayed their kinsman,
says Tarish, blue eyes smoldering in the moon's white light.
Good shot,
the dwarf mutters to himself, reloading his crossbow and watching the darkness for any signs that the retreating toadmen might return. The party takes a moment to regroup and ensure everyone is unharmed before resuming their defensive circle and watching the forest. The chorus of spring peepers returns to the marsh as the croaks of the toadmen fade into the night. The adventurers maintain their watch for about an hour, with a resolve strengthened by their successful defense. They know the journey through the marsh is far from over, but, together, they are ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. Day 2. Morning. The rest of the night passes without event. In the pre-dawn light of Tarish's watch, as his companions begin to stir, the barbarian takes the opportunity to inspect the dead toadman. He moves cautiously toward the fallen creature, sword ready in case of any lingering danger. He kneels beside the monster and examines it closely, noting its toad-like head, lanky limbs, and webbed feet. It's shorter than an average human, with rough, warty skin and a grotesque amphibian visage. Its eyes are large and bulging, and its muscular legs are adapted for leaping. A crude spear is still clutched in its hand. Tarish returns to the group, now fully awake and preparing for the day's journey, and reports his findings to Yari and Owen. Angarad sits on a soft bed of moss reviewing her spell book, while Elwyn completes her morning meditations. Once everyone is prepared, the party sets off toward the cliffs. The ground continues to rise along a natural ridge from the wetlands. The black soot Tarish has been following crisscrosses all over, indicating that the mythical monster moves about this area often. About 100 yards from the cliff, the barbarian spots a group of the toadmen armed with primitive spears and hide shields. He counts 6 of them, dragging a human male who looks to be unconscious. Tarish crouches down among the underbrush and quickly signals for his companions to stop, whispering back to them.
6 toadmen, armed with spears and shields. They're dragging a man toward the cliffs.
We can't let them take him,
whispers Owen.
We need a plan to approach them quietly and take them by surprise.
Yes,
urges Elwyn.
If he's still alive, we must help him. We need to act quickly.
After a brief discussion, the group agrees that Tarish and Yari will try to sneak closer. Now, on solid ground, barbarian and thief move as quickly and quietly as they can through the trees. Starting about as far from the toadmen as the toadmen are. From the cliffs, though, they have twice the distance to cover. They reach the edge of the trees to find the large sandstone cliff rising more than 50 feet out of the ridge to the east. The black sooty trail, now about 10 feet wide and solid, exits the forest and enters a large circular shaft in the base of the cliff some 100 yards away. About 100 yards south of that shaft, a pair of rusted iron gates lays smashed on the ground in front of another, smaller hole in the cliff base. Sandstone rubble lies scattered around this hole, into which the toadmen drag the human just as the dwarf and barbarian reach the edge of the forest. Tarish and Yari exchange a quick glance.
We need to follow them inside before they get too far,
whispers Tarish.
Tell the others to move up quietly.
Yari nods and gestures back into the forest, signaling for the rest of the party to advance. Tarish moves cautiously toward the hole near the southern end of the cliff, using the rubble for cover. Yari follows close behind, crossbow at the ready. Owen, Elwyn, and Angarad receive the signal and begin to move up as quietly as they can. When they reach the base of the cliff, the party regroups and prepares to enter the smaller hole, through which the toadmen took their victim. Yari takes the lead here to scout ahead for traps and potential ambushes inside the tunnel. Tarish and Owen fall in about 30 feet behind Yari, followed by Angarad. Elwyn lights her lantern and brings up the rear. Chapter 2. The Profane Chapel. Turn 1. The group enters the eastbound tunnel. Once about 10 feet wide, it appears to have collapsed at some point and is now choked with sandstone rubble, leaving only a narrow passage that slithers into the cliff like a black snake. The air in the passage is heavy and rotten. Flies can be heard buzzing around in the darkness. About 20 feet into the tunnel, Yari notices a small brass object glinting among the rubble. The dwarf carefully pries it loose with his dagger and inspects it in the light of Elwyn's lantern.
A brass cog. Might be part of some machinery. Not much use to us now, but perhaps we'll find something it fits into later.
He carefully places the cog in his pouch. Yari notes several such pieces of brass buried under the rubble along the passageway, which winds its way east for about 15 more feet before the stench of death becomes overwhelming. The party quickly discovers its source. The rotting head of a toadman lies smashed beneath the rubble. The rest of the creature has evidently been buried by the cave-in. Yari cautiously approaches the visible remains, checking for any signs of movement. He uses his dagger to carefully prod the body, ensuring that it is truly lifeless.
Let's move past it quickly,
urges Angarad, covering her nose with a corner of her robe.
The smell is quite unpleasant, and there might be more of them lurking nearby.
Turn 2. The adventurers hustle past the rotting corpse, squeezing themselves through the rubble-choked passage. It slinks eastward for another 20 or so feet, before ending abruptly in the middle of the western wall of a large chamber. The chamber is roughly 30 feet east to west and 50 feet north to south. The ceiling vaults some 20 feet overhead and is choked with cobwebs. The wall at the northern end of the chamber is concave, like the apse found in some churches. It's decorated with murals, though the party can't make out any details from their current position. Towering in front of the apse, atop a large stone plinth, is a massive statue of some blasphemous humanoid creature with 6 arms, a snake's head, and a spiked back. Each of its wrists is shackled in iron chains, and it holds brass lightning bolts in 3 of its hands. A small stone basin, like a holy water font, stands in front of the statue. Flies can be heard buzzing around it.
"Morrigan,"
whispers Torish, creeping forward behind Yari and gesturing at the gargantuan effigy.
"What is that thing?"
It looks like some kind of monstrous deity,
answers Owen with wide eyes. The squire carefully steps into the chamber, shield raised and gaze fixed on the statue. Angarad cautiously follows Owen, her staff held at the ready.
This place reeks of dark magic. Be on your guard, everyone.
Elwyn enters the chamber last, her lantern casting a flickering light on the unnaturally dark scene.
Yes.
She whispers from a mouth made dry by fear.
Chaos is palpable here.
Staying together, the party slowly advances toward the apse at the northern end of the primal chantry. Yari cautiously approaches the hideous statue, while Owen and Torish scan the chamber for any immediate threats. Angarad carefully moves toward the concave walls to inspect the murals, and Elwyn approaches the primitive stone basin. Turn 3. The stone basin is crudely reminiscent of the holy water fonts common in the divine order of law. Botflies buzz around the rancid water within. Elwyn recoils instinctively and covers her mouth.
This is meant to be a holy water font,
she says in a voice laced with both disgust and sadness.
But the water is foul. It's desecrated.
The statue is an enormous, dreadful thing made of black stone, alien even to Yari. Easily 12 feet high and standing on a sandstone plinth as tall as the dwarf, it towers over the party like a 2-story nightmare. On the plinth is a plaque inscribed with a verse in Gnomish. The chains are iron and are bolted about the statue's 6 wrists. The lightning bolts appear to be made of brass and are held loosely in the upper 3 of its 6 clawed hands. A prominent spine protrudes from the row of spikes along its back.
"This sculpture,"
stammers Yari in hushed tones.
"It's unlike anything I've ever seen in dwarven craftsmanship, or any craftsmanship. There's an inscription on the plinth in Gnomish. It reads, 'MULVIS, our unwilling protector.' It seems this statue might be the shrine's namesake."
These murals depict a battle between gnomes and a creature that looks just like the statue,
says Angarad, studying the art engraved on the walls of the apse.
Look, here on the right, a gnome king is pulling a spine on its back while others bind it in chains.
Her voice is hushed with awe and a touch of fear. She points at the statue.
It seems they imprisoned this creature here.
So, is this MULVIS?
Asks Owen with apprehensive curiosity.
It's their protector, but against its will. That explains the chains. If it's as powerful as the murals suggest, it could still be dangerous, chains or no.
Tarish, who has been crouched down to study the floor, looks up.
There are tracks here, maybe from those toadmen. They lead toward that curved wall.
He points at the apse. The group decides to examine the apse more carefully. Owen and Tarish keep an eye on the ominous statue, while Elwyn, Angharad, and Yari begin searching for more clues in the murals. Turn 4. A careful inspection of the apse reveals two things. First, Yari notices that the prominent spine on the demon's back in the mural, on which the Gnome King is depicted pulling, matches the protruding spine on the back of the statue. Second, Angarad spots a secret door in the apex of the mural at the northernmost point of the curved wall.
Angarad, look!
Yari nearly shouts before hushing himself.
The spine on the statue matches the one in the mural, the one the Gnome King is pulling. Perhaps that's how they controlled it.
And there's more,
says Angarad, pointing to the arc of the mural.
There's a hidden door here, right at the apex of the wall.
A secret door?
Asks Owen.
That could be our way forward, but we need to be careful. If pulling that spine controls the creature, we don't want to trigger it accidentally.
Perhaps we can try to open the door without disturbing the statue,
suggests Elwyn.
Yari, can you check for any traps around the door?
Turn 5. Yari does not discover any traps on the door, but nor does he find an obvious way to open it. Turn 6. Rest turn.
I can't find a way to open the door,
says the footpad, frustrated. He sits down and pulls a long draught from his wineskin.
No levers, buttons, or pressure plates that I can see. Perhaps there's a hidden trigger somewhere else in the room.
Maybe the basin has something to do with it,
guesses Owen.
It's the only other notable feature in this room besides the statue, though I'm not keen on touching that filth.
It's possible,
muses Angarad.
Or perhaps the chains on the statue play a role. The murals depict the gnomes binding the creature after all.
We could try interacting with the statue itself,
suggests Yari.
Maybe pulling the spine, like in the mural, will trigger something.
The dwarf looks at Tarish.
But we'll need to be ready in case it awakens.
I'll be ready,
nods Tarish with a fierce grimace.
If this thing comes to life, I'll be the first to greet it with my sword.
All right,
says Elwyn.
Let's proceed with caution. We don't want to unleash something we can't control.
She takes a step back, her hand hovering near her holy symbol. The party takes some time to consider the consequences of pulling on the spine of the massive black effigy that towers over them so menacingly. Turn 7. Tarish leaps up onto the plinth and climbs the giant sculpture with the casual agility of a leopard scaling a tree. With a glance at his companions to ensure they're prepared, he draws his sword with one hand and pulls down on the protruding spine with the other. There's an audible click inside the statue, followed by a few tense seconds of silence. Then, slowly, the secret door opens with a grinding sound to reveal a dark corridor that travels farther north than Elwyn's lantern can reveal.
Well,
says Tarish as he releases the spine.
I suppose that could have been worse.
Owen scans the corridor.
A passage to the north. Let's hope this leads us closer to those toadmen and their captive.
Aye,
agrees Yari.
But let's not forget about that statue. Keep an eye on it, Tarish.
The barbarian is peering up into the vaulted, cobwebbed ceiling.
We may not be the only ones with eyes in here.
There is a moment of silence as the others try to follow Tarish's gaze.
Dare I ask?
Says Angarad. Tarish points at the apex of the ceiling, just at the edge of Elwyn's light. The dried husk of a long-dead toadman is layered within the cobwebs.
All right,
says Owen.
Let's get moving. We don't need to meet any more spiders, singing or otherwise.
Agreed.
States Elwyn, raising her lantern to illuminate the corridor.
Yari, would you like to scout ahead again?
To be sure,
Responds the dwarf, happy to exit the unnerving chamber. He moves stealthily into the corridor, dark eyes scanning for traps and ears attuned to any sounds in the darkness. Eager to escape whatever might be lurking on the ceiling of the profane chapel, the others crowd behind him until everyone is in the hallway. Owen and Torish take up a rearguard position to ensure no curious critters decide to follow the party. Turn 8. The corridor is about 5 feet wide, 6 feet tall, and runs due north into darkness. Cleaner than the floor of the chapel, its sandstone floor bears no apparent sign of the tracks Torish discovered. Just inside, about 10 feet to the north of the now open secret portal, is a closed door on the western side of the corridor.
there's a closed door ahead on the left,
Yari whispers back. He gestures for the others to join him, keeping his crossbow aimed at the door.
I'll take the lead,
Says Owen.
Elwyn, stay close behind me.
The squire moves forward, shield raised and sword at the ready. He positions himself in front of the door, prepared to defend against any sudden attack. Elwyn follows Owen, keeping the lantern held high to illuminate the area. She remains alert, her shield ready. Torish maintains his position to the rear of the group, peering watchfully back into the darkness of the chapel. Yari presses his ear against the door, listening intently.
Anything?
Asks Owen.
Nothing.
Responds the thief, stepping back from the door and nodding at Owen. Turn 9. The squire opens the door to reveal a large closet, roughly 15 feet squared. The walls are lined with broken shelves. Moldy, gnome-sized robes litter the floor. In the center of the room is a smaller version of the giant snake-headed statue the party discovered in the chapel area. This one is about 5.5 feet tall and looks like it's made of brass. It holds 6 bronze short swords in its 6 hands and is not bound with chains. It's difficult to discern more details about the statue without entering the room to inspect it.
Another statue,
Observes Owen.
smaller this time and made of brass. It looks like a miniature version of the one in the other chamber.
Let's be careful.
Says Yari, entering the closet cautiously.
This could be another guardian.
The footpad carefully examines the base of the statue and the surrounding area for any traps or hidden mechanisms, while Angarad studies its serpentine features and inscriptions, hoping to glean any insights into its purpose or origin. The closer inspection reveals seams and rivets at all the construct's joints, as well as what appear to be small vent holes in various places on its torso. Rapping lightly on it creates a hollow sound. The short swords are bronze and quite sharp. There is an indentation on its back in the shape of a lightning bolt.
This isn't a statue at all,
Realizes Yari out loud.
It's some kind of contraption like an automaton. Gnomes are known for building such things.
He points to the seams and joints.
See? It's put together in pieces.
And look at this, Yari.
Adds Angarad.
An indentation shaped like a lightning bolt.
Her eyes widen with realization.
Perhaps those brass bolts in the other statue's hands are meant to activate this one.
An automaton guardian?
Asks Owen.
That would explain why it's armed with swords.
He tightens his grip on his shield, imagining what it would be like to try and defend against 6 swinging blades at the same time. Torish looks on with interest from his position outside the door. Superstitions about magic notwithstanding, the barbarian's experience with the machinery in the jeweler's sanctum has sparked within him a curiosity about the mechanical devices engineered by civilized men.
So, we put the brass thunderstrokes in its back, and it comes to life?
It's possible.
Confirms Angarad.
But what if it attacks us?
Asks Elwyn, shining her lantern on the automaton. She looks at Angharad.
Do you think you could cast a spell to disable it if necessary?
Angarad shakes her head.
I have the sleep spell memorized, but I'm not sure it would work on an automaton. It's designed to affect living creatures, not constructs.
She pauses, considering her options.
Perhaps we should try activating it first and see what happens. If it turns hostile, we can always try to turn it off or retreat.
Yari, still inspecting the thing with admiration in his dark eyes, looks up.
Remember the inscription on the other statue? MULVIS, our unwilling protector. Perhaps this automaton is meant to defend this place, even if it's not actively hostile now.
We also need to consider the Toadmen,
adds Owen.
If this thing is meant to protect the shrine, it might try to find and attack them as well, along with their captive. We don't want to accidentally hinder our rescue mission.
Let's just activate it and see what happens,
says Tarish, his inquisitiveness increasing by the moment.
We can handle whatever comes our way.
Elwyn frowns.
I'm still hesitant. We don't know what this thing is capable of. Perhaps we should explore a bit more first.
We could,
agrees Yari.
But time is of the essence. The Toadmen have their captive, and we don't know what they plan to do with him.
I agree with Yari,
says Angarad, emerald eyes shining with all the curiosity that killed the proverbial cat.
Let's activate the automaton and see what happens. We can always adapt our strategy based on its behavior.
All right,
says Tarish.
I'll get those lightning bolts.
He lights a torch from his pack and strides back towards the chapel chamber, apparently no longer concerned about the ones with eyes he sensed lurking in its vaulted ceiling.
I'll help you,
says Yari, following the barbarian.
Let's see if we can get this thing working.
Turn 10. Tarish and Yari return to the chapel chamber, climb the plinth, and crawl up the statue. The 3 brass lightning bolts are held loosely in the upper 3 of its 6 clawed hands. They seem to be easy to remove. As Tarish and Yari are working, they hear a chittering sound above them. They look at each other. Then they look up. Tarish slowly raises his torch. A pair of 5-foot-long hunting spiders, wriggling monstrosities that look like enormous deep-sea crabs, descend upon them on strands of silk from the cobwebbed, vaulted ceiling above.
Crab spiders!
Shouts Yari, leaping down from his perch with Tarish close behind. The barbarian's torch falls to the floor below with a sputtering clatter. Combat, round 1. Yari hits the chapel floor and rolls as the massive spider above releases itself from its silk rope. The quick dwarf fires his crossbow from his back, and the bolt slams into the monster's belly just as it lands on him. The wriggling horror tries to sink its fangs into the dwarf, but Yari manages to use his now empty crossbow as a bulwark to stave them off for the moment. The second monster lands on Tarish while the barbarian is in mid-leap. Both come crashing, tangled together, to the floor. Tarish rolls onto his back and positions his feet against the spider. Poison ejaculates from the arachnid's fangs as the warrior launches it backward with a powerful thrust of his legs. The commotion in the chapel echoes down the corridor, reaching the ears of the rest of the party.
Trouble,
says Owen, sprinting toward the chapel, sword drawn and shield at the ready. Elwyn and Angarad follow close behind. Combat, round 2. Yari struggles frantically to fend off the ravening crab spider on top of him, which attacks with the tenacity of some rabid, 8-legged pit bull. Holding his crossbow with one hand between himself and the lashing fangs, he fumbles for Oryx's axe with his other hand. He's able to work the axe free, but the sheer speed and size of the thrashing monster prevent him from using it effectively. Tarish rolls backward and onto his feet as the second skittering predator launches itself at him. Working his hide shield off his back, he gets it between himself and the monster with a split second to spare. The fiend bites and thrashes furiously, trying to bypass the warrior's defenses. Drawing his sword, Tarish shoves the blade into the creature full to the hilt, sending the chitinous terror spasming into death. Owen, Elwyn, and Angarad burst into the chapel to witness Tarish withdrawing his sword from the corpse of one giant spider, Yari grappling on the floor with another, and the massive statue of MULVIS lording above like a demoniac spectator. Combat, round 3. Seeing his companions, Yari forfeits any attempt to wound the spider on top of him,
Get it off!
He shouts. Using both hands against the stock of his crossbow, he concentrates on fending off its attacks. His focus on defense pays off as he again deflects the monster's dripping fangs. Owen charges, trying to save the dwarf. The spider senses the rushing knight and leaps off Yari and onto the wall. Leaving a trail of blood from Yari's crossbow bolt, it crawls with spine-chilling speed into the darkness of the vaulted ceiling above. Elwyn and Angarad quickly help Yari to his feet.
Are you bit?
Asks Elwyn, concerned.
Aye, a scratch, merry 'tis enough,
quoth the dwarf, looking up resentfully at the ceiling.
Crab spiders. We have them in Stony Vale, ambush predators. They were reticent when we were all in here before, but saw an easy supper in just Torish and me.
This one had a supper of cold steel,
boasts Torish, pointing his bloody sword at his dead foe before retrieving his torch from the floor. The chamber falls once again into a terrible silence, punctuated by the panting of the companions and the occasional drip of blood from high overhead. The adventurers catch their breath, adrenaline slowly subsiding.
Let's not tempt fate,
says Angarad, scanning the darkness above.
There could be more of them.
Right,
agrees Owen.
We can come back for the bolts another time.
Chapter 3. A Gnome and His Dog. Turn 11. The group quickly vacates the chapel through the secret door once again, closing it behind them for good measure. They walk up the northbound corridor, passing the automaton closet on their left. After about 50 feet, they come across a short eastward passage branching off to their right, which ends at a closed door. Just to the north, the main corridor reaches a dead end after another 15 feet. There's a curious alcove on the right side of this dead end, about 3 feet deep and empty. Turn 12. Rest turn.
A dead end with an alcove,
says Yari, rubbing his bruised neck.
And a side passage leading to a closed door. I suggest we investigate the side passage first. It's closer, and the door might lead us somewhere important.
Agreed,
adds Owen.
But let's not forget about the alcove. It seems odd for there to be an empty space like that in a dead end. Perhaps there's something hidden there.
I'll examine the alcove while Yahri checks the door for traps,
says Angarad.
We should be thorough in our search.
The party splits up, with Yari approaching the closed door and Angarad moving towards the alcove. The others stay alert, ready to help if needed. Turn 13. Angarad scours the alcove but is unable to detect any secret doors. Yari does not discover any traps on the door he's inspecting.
Nothing here,
says the elf, stepping back from the alcove.
It's just an empty space.
The door is clear of traps,
confirms Yari.
Owen, shall we open it?
Turn 14. The door opens to a small room about the same size as the automaton closet. Across the room, in the southern end of the eastern wall, is a closed brass hatch, about 4 feet tall, without an apparent knob or handle. 2 large sofas, once opulent but now moldy with age, rest against the northern and southern walls. A bedroll, an accordion, and a sack of iron rations are stacked on the southern couch. Sitting on the northern couch is an ash-haired gnome. He is small but well-muscled. He does not wear a beard, as is common with gnomes, but rather a pair of large, handlebar mustaches. He has apparently heard the party through the door and has aimed at them a strange device that looks to be part crossbow, part trumpet. A small brass dog, about the size of a terrier, sits at his feet, growling at the group with whirring bronze eyes and a wagging mechanical tail.
"State your business,"
demands the gnome in a curiously powerful voice.
"You don't look like gloops."
We're not gloops,
answers Yari indignantly.
We're adventurers. Also, what's a gloop?
Owen raises his shield, watching the gnome's strange weapon nervously.
We're searching for a group of toadmen who took a victim captive. Have you seen them?
The gnome eyes the group suspiciously. He slightly lowers the strange cannon-like device he's holding and speaks in gnomish, which only Angarad and Yari understand.
"Did the knight say toadmen?" Where did you see them and what were they doing?
Yari does his best to translate the question for the group, while Angarad steps forward.
We saw them outside,
Says the elf in rusty gnomish.
near the entrance to this shrine. They were dragging an unconscious human into a hole in the cliff. We're trying to rescue him.
Gloops,
The gnome says, nodding. Still in gnomish, he continues.
Those were gloops, slimy amphibious devils with toad heads and limbs. Malodorous, flabby, hunched and vicious. A whole tribe of them recently came to infest the marsh, led by their chieftain, the perfidious Captain Gullion.
Yari continues his rough translation. Angarad nods emphatically, still speaking in gnomish.
Yes, we saw them with a human captive. Do you know where they might have taken him?
Oh yes,
Says the gnome, pursing his lips in distaste.
to feed SOOTMURK.
Everyone can understand SOOTMURK. Angarad glances at Yari, then back to the gnome.
The gloops are sacrificing people to the dragon?
Yes, the bloody fiends.
Says the gnome, still in his native tongue.
They found our ancient shrine and awakened SOOTMURK, who had been hibernating contentedly here for years. They worship her as the ultimate embodiment of their own putrid unctuousness. They waylay travelers to feed and please her when she's feeling too lazy to hunt.
Angarad's elven pride bristles at the thought of such cruelty, and her expression hardens.
We must stop them. Can you tell us how to reach this dragon's lair?
The gnome looks at the party with a dubious expression.
First, who are you people?
We are adventurers.
Responds the magic user, her linguistic control of gnomish slowly coming back to her.
I am Angharad the medium. My companions are Elwyn the adept, Owen the squire, Torish the hunter, and Yari the footpad. We came here in response to Duke Ganelon's call for aid. His people are in danger, and we intend to stop these gloops and their dragon.
The gnome looks relieved.
I am GORFTHISTLE, a treasure hunter.
He says in the common tongue.
This is my dog Butch. I am here to kill SOOTMURK and recover the fabled sword MULVIS and the lost crown of King Bomfluke. I know this shrine's history well.
GORFTHISTLE,
Says Yari respectfully.
it's an honor to meet a fellow treasure hunter. And Butch, you're a fine specimen of craftsmanship.
It seems we have a common enemy,
Says Owen.
Perhaps we can work together to achieve our goals.
Indeed.
Says Elwyn with a warm smile.
Together, we stand a better chance against both the gloops and the dragon.
She looks at GORFTHISTLE with hope in her eyes.
Can you lead us to SOOTMURK's lair?
Butch stands up and paws at Elwyn.
Down, Butch!
Commands GORFTHISTLE.
Please excuse my mechanical dog. He likes to beg for oil.
Elwyn chuckles softly and pats Butch awkwardly on his brass head.
He's quite charming, really. We all need a little oil now and then. Don't we, Butch?
She gives the mechanical dog a friendly scratch behind the ears.
But GORFTHISTLE,
Says Angarad.
we're eager to rescue the captive and confront SOOTMURK. Can you guide us to her lair?
One thing at a time.
GORFTHISTLE says, adjusting the curls of his handlebar mustaches.
If you're looking for a captive, the gloops have probably taken him to the northern side of the shrine. That's assuming they haven't fed him to SOOTMURK yet, or killed him out of boredom. On the other hand, if you're looking to confront old SOOTMURK, you'd better be a lot tougher than you appear.
Yari glances at his companions with a bright gleam in his dark eyes.
We'll find a way to deal with SOOTMURK. But first, let's rescue the captive. Can you lead us to the northern side of the shrine?
After careful consideration, GORFTHISTLE says,
I agree, on the condition that if we find the sword, MULVIS or King Bomfluke's crown, I get to keep them.
Agreed.
Says Owen.
Let's make haste and reach the prisoner before it's too late.
GORFTHISTLE retrieves a scroll from inside the accordion and tucks it into his vest. He points at the flat brass hatch in the eastern wall of the room.
You'll notice there is no handle on that door. It cannot be opened from this side. I have not fully explored the north side of the shrine yet, but I know of a secret door in the passage from which you just came that should take us there.
Lead the way, GORFTHISTLE.
Elwyn gently urges.
We're eager to find this captive.
Chapter 4. The Sword in the Slag. Turn 15. GORFTHISTLE leads the group back to the alcove where Angarad searched for the secret door.
The secret door is here.
Yari squints at the alcove, then at GORFTHISTLE.
Are you sure? We already checked this spot.
Perhaps I missed something,
Admits Angarad.
Butch, door.
Commands GORFTHISTLE. The mechanical terrier who has been sniffing the steel greaves worn by Owen and Elwyn in a hunt for oil looks up with whirring eyes that spin like two automated kaleidoscopes. He obediently dashes to the alcove's eastern wall, sniffs it for a while, and then begins pawing at it like a pet demanding to be let in from the yard.
Butch is an expert finder of secret doors,
Intimates GORFTHISTLE proudly as the eastern wall of the alcove slides open.
Well, I'll be,
Says Yari, suitably impressed.
a clever trick.
That's one smart, hound you've got there.
Laughs the normally laconic Torish, apparently quite tickled with the mechanical dog.
Good boy, Butch.
Declares Elwyn, dipping her finger in her lantern's oil and letting Butch lick it off with his oscillating brass tongue. Turn 16. The secret door opens into the southern end of the western wall of a large chamber, some 50 feet squared. Its ceiling is as high as that of the chapel, about 20 feet overhead. Overturned workbenches, tools, broken metal casts of gears, and automaton body parts lie in piles scattered about the place. The southwestern half of the room is covered in soot. There is a mural along the northern wall that the party cannot make out from their current position. A massive stone vat, some 20 feet squared, occupies the northern middle of the chamber, surrounded by 5 black anvils. A giant bellows stands atop a wheeled wooden dolly in the southwestern corner of the room in front of the adventurers. There are 3 exits to the chamber, not counting the secret door through which the party now enters. A circular shaft, 10 feet in diameter and choked with soot, exits the western wall at its northern end. A similar shaft, also choked with soot, exits the southern wall near its eastern end. Finally, there is a smaller corridor near the northern end of the eastern wall.
Looks like a foundry of some sort,
Speculates Yari as he, GORFTHISTLE, and Butch carefully lead the others into the soot-soaked chamber.
This must be where they were making those automatons. Looks like it hasn't been used in a while.
Not since the gnomes were here,
Confirms GORFTHISTLE, his voice rueful.
Before old SOOTMURK came and wrecked the place. Gloops are dumber than turnips and have no idea what this room even is.
Let's examine the mural,
Says Angarad, lifting the hem of her robes in a vain attempt to avoid the soot as she picks her way toward the northern wall.
I'll help you, Angarad.
Says Elwyn, following her with the lantern.
Perhaps together we can decipher its meaning.
As the pair approaches the northern wall, they can see daylight at the end of the large, blackened shaft in the western wall. Angarad gasps.
Look, Elwyn, daylight. That shaft must lead outside.
Elwyn stares down the shaft.
Is that the same tunnel we saw from the outside this morning?
Torish approaches.
Aye. There were 2 entrances into the cliff face. One was a large shaft to the north, through which the black grease trail went. The other was smaller, and to the south, through which the toadmen, gloops, took their captive. We entered through the latter.
Right,
Says Angarad.
so we must have made our way to the northern entrance from inside the dungeon.
Look at the mural.
Says Elwyn in wonder, shining her lantern on the northern wall of the foundry.
It shows MULVIS, the creature from the chapel, blasting the forge with lightning. Perhaps this is where they created the automatons, and MULVIS destroyed it in their battle.
Well, no,
Says GORFTHISTLE, approaching Elwyn. He studies the mural as would an archaeologist discovering the lost civilization of his own ancestors.
MULVIS is powering the forge with his lightning, not destroying it.
So,
Asks Angarad.
MULVIS was in fact a god to the gnomes of this shrine?
Not precisely.
Says GORFTHISTLE. He rubs his fingers lightly along the base of the massive mural.
He was more like a defender, albeit a not altogether willing defender. The legend is that King Bombfluke captured him and placed him in indentured servitude.
Hence Mulvis, our unwilling protector, on the plinth,
adds Elwyn.
Yes.
Confirms Gorfthistle. Yari approaches.
We've work to do. Let's split up and search the chamber quickly. Owen and Tarish, you check the eastern corridor. Gorfthistle and I will examine the vat and the anvils. Elwyn, if you would, please inspect the bellows and dolly. Angarad, please see if you can find anything that stands out among the mechanical pieces.
Turn 17. Gorfthistle and Yari approach the great stone vat. It's roughly 20 feet squared, stands about 2 feet high, and is surrounded by 5 large black anvils. Its walls are solid sandstone, about 2 feet thick. It's filled to the top with solidified iron. The whole picture is reminiscent of an ice skating rink made of frozen iron slag. From the middle of the solidified iron protrudes an ornate sword hilt. Its bright blade is buried to the shoulder as though someone stuck it in the molten slag before it cooled.
Legs of Blaine,
swears Yari.
That's a magnificent sword and embedded in solid iron.
He turns to Gorfthistle, a bright gleam in his dark eyes.
Could it be Mulvestial?
Gorfthistle's own azure eyes are ablaze with excitement.
It could be.
He hastily digs through his vest and produces a rough sketch of the legendary gnomish sword.
But how are we going to get it out? That iron looks impossibly thick.
Yari strokes his beard thoughtfully.
We'll need to find a way to melt or break the iron. Perhaps there's something in this room that can help us.
He begins to examine the anvils and the surrounding area, searching for any tools or clues. Angarad, accompanied by Butch, peruses the various crafting tables scattered about the foundry. Most of the items are mechanical in nature and unfamiliar to the magic user. She does find a small gold ingot and is studying a strange brass musical device she vaguely recalls humans referring to as a tuba, when she hears a gentle ringing sound nearby. Looking down, she sees Butch wagging his mechanical tail happily. In his mouth is a small bell. He seems to be offering it to her.
"Hello, little one,"
says the elf maiden, kneeling down.
"Is this a gift for me?"
She gently takes the bell from Butch and studies it. It's an ornate ceremonial brass bell of the kind often used in religious sacraments and seems out of place in the industrial foundry. She thanks Butch by pouring him a small bowl of machine oil from a nearby table and places the bell and gold ingot in her pack. Elwyn approaches the enormous bellows in the southwestern corner of the chamber. The cleric understands that bellows are used to pump air into forge fires to make them burn hotter. This one is situated on a large wooden dolly. Elwyn suspects the gnomes used it so that one bellows could serve several forges, thereby reducing the need for multiple bellows. The adept gives the bellows a few experimental pumps, watching as the air rushes forth in great swirling gouts. She then gently pushes the dolly and is surprised how easily it moves, even on the soot-covered tiles of the foundry. Tarish lights a torch before he and Owen explore the hallway near the northern end of the eastern wall of the foundry. It only travels about 10 feet east before opening into an old storeroom. Some 20 feet squared, it's strewn with broken crates and moldering straw pallets. It reeks of filth. Another corridor exits the southern wall of the room near its eastern side. 4 gloop guards, croaking and chuckling, are playing a game of darts. Their target is a man shackled to the eastern wall of the room. He is the same man Tarish spotted being dragged into the cliffs this morning. He is clearly dead, and several darts protrude from his naked body. "Gloops," whispers Owen fiercely. He draws his sword, hazel eyes ablaze with anger.
And they've used the captive as their dartboard. They must pay for their cruelty.
A predatory grin spreads across the barbarian's broad jaw as he readies a javelin.
I think I'll play a round of darts as well.
Combat. Surprise round. Party wins surprise. The fighters catch the gloops completely off guard. Tarish hurls his javelin like a mammoth hunter. The projectile whistles through the air, piercing the first gloop guard through the back. The creature lets out a startled croak before collapsing onto the floor, dead without knowing why. Owen's sword flashes as he lunges towards the second gloop. Despite its shock, however, the creature manages to raise its crude short sword, parrying Owen's blow with a metallic clang. Its amphibian eyes widen with fear as it realizes the danger it's in. The remaining two gloops, startled by the sudden violence, scramble to ready their weapons as the two sides square off. Combat. Round 1. Tarish roars forward, swinging his sword in an arc. He turns the stroke in the last instant to gore his target. The creature slams into the stone wall, sliding dead to the floor as the barbarian withdraws his blade from its torso. Owen easily blocks a spear thrust from the third gloop, his shield ringing with the impact. With a swift pivot, he redirects his momentum into a deft counterstrike. His sword finds its mark in the creature's exposed flank. The gloop's croak turns into a choked gurgle as it falls, and its spear clatters to the stone floor. The final gloop lashes out at Owen with its short sword, but the squire is far too nimble. Even in plate mail, the knight in training is blessed with the natural grace of a young stag, and his sword flashes up to deflect the blow almost effortlessly. The gloop stumbles back, its bulging black eyes wide and frantic. Combat. Round 2. Terrified, the gloop guard drops its short sword and collapses on the floor, croaking pitifully and covering its head. Tarish's eyes burn wild with battle lust.
"What's the matter, Toadman?"
he taunts, pointing to the deceased human victim.
"Prefer your opponents shackled to a wall like this poor fellow?"
Owen sheathes his sword and steps between the barbarian and his prey.
Hold, Tarish, the creature is clearly defeated.
He looks down at the gloop, his voice firm though not cruel.
Stand up, we have questions for you.
It soon becomes clear that the gloop speaks neither the common tongue nor any tongue Owen or Tarish has ever heard. Using rope from Tarish's pack, they bind and gag the wretched creature before returning to the foundry. Turn 18. Rest turn. The party reconvenes in the center of the foundry to discuss their findings.
Butch brought me this,
says Angarad, holding up the ornate brass bell.
I can't be sure yet, but I believe it's special somehow. Perhaps it holds some power that can aid us. I also found a small gold ingot.
We found the captive,
says Owen bitterly.
But we came too late. 4 gloops had murdered him.
A grim silence falls over the party for a moment. Angarad sighs softly and closes her eyes. Yari and Gorfthistle look down. Elwyn grasps her holy symbol and whispers some silent benediction before gently touching Owen's hand. She's comforted when she feels his hand tenderly grip hers in return.
What became of the gloops?
Asks Yari at length.
Tarish and I dispatched 3 of them, and the 4th surrendered,
answers Owen.
It's currently tied up in the storeroom.
I don't ween there's much use in conversing with it at the moment,
asks Gorfthistle.
"No,"
says Tarish.
"The wretch doesn't croak a lick of common in any event."
Well,
sighs Angarad after another moment of silence.
We are reminded why we've come here.
Owen nods.
Yes, to slay the proverbial dragon. The question is how.
Gorfthistle and I believe we found his fabled sword, MULVIS shell,
says Yari.
A legendary weapon, trapped in solid iron.
He glances at the vat.
We need to find a way to free it.
Maybe we can use that bellows to heat up the iron and melt it,
says Elwyn, gesturing to the southwest corner of the chamber. Gorfthistle shakes his head.
The bellows won't be enough to melt that much iron. We'll need something far hotter. Perhaps SOOTMURK's boiling breath could do the trick,
he adds wryly.
I'm not sure she'd oblige us,
laughs Yari. He pauses, deep in thought.
Perhaps there's another way. The murals show MULVIS using lightning to power the forge. Maybe there's a way to harness that power again.
Angharad's green eyes flash with excitement.
The lightning bolts, the ones we saw in the chapel held by the statue of MULVIS. Perhaps they're the key.
Elwyn nods zestfully, sharing the magic user's excitement.
And the brass golem we found earlier. It had an indentation on its back shaped like a lightning bolt. We were going to insert one of the bolts into it.
Gorfthistle winces.
We have to be careful with the automaton of MULVIS. It's a wind-up toy of death. Once activated, there's no telling what it might do.
Could be handy against the grease dragon, though,
muses Tarish. Owen sighs.
How do we get it to her? We don't know where she is, and it looked extremely heavy.
Tarish the hunter looks at the massive trail of soot leading from the shaft in the western wall to the shaft in the southern wall.
Oh, I think I have a pretty good idea where she is,
And the bellows is on that large cart,
says Elwyn, gesturing at the dolly.
It's designed for moving heavy objects and seems quite sturdy. I was able to move it pretty easily.
All right,
says Yari.
but the last time Torish and I tried to get those lightning bolts, we almost became dinner for a pair of crab spiders.
One of that pair went hungry and wounded,
Boasts Torish.
and I sent the other one to the Seven Hells. Besides, any others may not be so confident if we're all together.
Owen removes his helmet and tousles his copper hair.
Very well. Let's remove the bellows and wheel the dolly back down to the closet. There we can load the automaton of Mulvis on the cart. Then we can all go into the chapel together. Hopefully, any critters in the ceiling will be deterred from eating us by our sheer numbers. Once there, we can fetch the lightning bolts and bring everything back up here.
And then what?
Asks Gorfthistle,
I was going to ask the same thing.
says Angarad.
Well,
Says Yari.
maybe we can free Mulvis' shell from the slag and go from there.
He looks at Gorfthistle.
Do you think the lightning bolts, together with Elwyn's bellows, may be able to melt that solidified iron?
The gnome shrugs.
Based on the mural, the cult of Mulvis appears to have believed so. And, I suppose, if the lightning bolts can activate the automaton of Mulvis, they must have energy. Although I'm not sure precisely how we use the lightning bolts on the vat.
Elwyn smiles.
Like you said, Gorfthistle, one thing at a time, right?
Turn 19. Tarish and Owen lift the bellows long enough for Elwyn to slide the dolly out from under it. Thereafter, the party prepares to leave the foundry and return to the southern end of the shrine. Turn 20. Yari and Butch take the lead, exiting through the secret door in the southern end of the western wall of the foundry, followed by Tarish, Owen, and Elwyn with the dolly. Angarad carries the lantern and brings up the rear with Gorfthistle. The group walks south down the passage until arriving at the automaton closet on the western side of the corridor. Turn 21. It takes the combined strength of Tarish, Owen, Yari, and Gorfthistle to lift the automaton of Mulvis long enough for Elwyn to slide the dolly under it. Once loaded, however, Tarish can move the dolly back into the hallway by himself. Turn 22. Leaving the loaded dolly just outside the closet, the group opens the secret door at the southern end of the corridor and re-enters the profane chapel. All eyes are on the vaulted ceiling, but there does not appear to be any spiders lurking up there for the moment. Turn 23. With Owen and Tarish standing guard, Yari and Gorfthistle scale the enormous effigy of Mulvis. They remove the 3 brass lightning bolts and return safely to the chapel floor. The adventurers once again hustle north out of the chapel through the secret door and close it behind them. Turn 24. Rest. Turn. The group takes a brief rest to discuss their next course of action. Elwyn refills the lantern with a flask of oil, making sure to share a small amount with Butch. Yari looks at the others and gestures up the northbound corridor.
Let's head back to the foundry. We have the lightning bolts, and the automaton is ready to activate. It's time to see if we can free Mulvis' shell and figure out how to use this contraption.
Owen nods, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword.
Agreed. Let's move quickly and efficiently. We don't want to linger in this place any longer than necessary.
Elwyn, lantern held high, smiles warmly.
Let's proceed with caution, but also with hope. We're getting closer to our goal.
Chapter 5. A Change in Plans. Turn 25. With renewed purpose, the party sets off up the corridor. The dolly creaks softly under the weight of the brass android as Tarish pushes it like an ox behind a yoke. They pass Gorfthistle's hideout on their right before reaching the alcove of the secret door on the east side of the corridor's dead end. Here, Butch begins a quiet growl. which sounds a bit like small gears grinding together, and stands in the pointer position common to foxhounds.
Something's in the foundry,
whispers Gorfthistle. Carefully peering through the secret door into the foundry, Yari can make out 4 gloops. They enter from the shaft in the northern end of the western wall of the chamber, walk ponderously through the foundry, and exit into the shaft at the eastern end of the southern wall. They don't seem to see the dwarf, nor do they appear to be armed. Yari turns back to the group, his voice a hushed whisper.
4 gloops just passed through the foundry. I don't think they saw us, and they weren't armed. They came in through the exhaust shaft from outside and went into the southern shaft. We don't know where that one goes.
Tarish frowns.
We could ambush them, but they might be part of a larger group. We don't want to alert the others prematurely.
Owen nods, his brow furrowed in thought.
Perhaps we should let them pass for now. We can observe their movements and gather more information. It might give us an advantage later.
What were they doing, Yari?
Asks Gorfthistle, holding gently onto Butch's leather collar.
You said they weren't armed.
Yari shakes his head.
That's what's strange. They weren't carrying any weapons or tools. They just waddled through the foundry and disappeared into the southern shaft.
He pauses, considering the implications.
Perhaps they were on a scouting mission, or maybe they were checking on something in the southern part of the shrine.
Responds the gnome enigmatically.
Probably on one of their pilgrimages.
Pilgrimages?
Asks Yari, sharing a puzzled glance with Angarad. Gorfthistle looks at Tarish and Owen.
You said you took a gloop captive in that storeroom where you found the murdered human.
Yes,
responds Owen.
We tried to get some information from him, but there was, well, a bit of a language barrier.
Gorfthistle nods.
Take me to him. I've picked up some rudimentary gloop tongue along the way, and it may be worth our while to chat with him after all.
Turn 26. Once confident the foundry is unoccupied, the group enters. Tarish returns the dolly, now loaded with the automaton of Mulvis, to its former position. Owen and Elwyn then prop the bellows up on its north side in hopes of concealing it from any passers-by. The party then hastily makes its way across the soot-blackened foundry from its southwestern corner to the corridor at its northeastern corner. Owen and Tarish lead the group east down the short corridor and into the storeroom. Turn 27. Rest turn. The abandoned storeroom is in the same condition as the fighters left it. 3 dead gloops lay scattered about the floor. The human male prisoner, killed through torture, remains shackled to the wall with several darts still protruding from his naked body. The 4th gloop sits huddled in the northeastern corner of the room, bound about the hands, feet, and maw with Tarish's rope. Owen, his face grim, approaches the dead human.
I'm sorry we could not save you,
he says in a voice heavy with sorrow. Elwyn steps in close to the squire and speaks softly.
You did everything you could, Owen. I will say a brief rite for him now. When we're finished with the devils responsible for this, we'll collect his body and return him to his kinsman.
The bound gloop, black eyes bulging with fear, cowers in the corner, sputtering muffled croaks. Gorfthistle and Tarish approach. Tarish's baleful blue eyes stare into the gloop's large black ones. Once satisfied the creature understands his primal warning, the barbarian unlashes the latigo-style binding around the broad, frog-like mouth. Gorfthistle issues a short series of croaks with what sounds to the adventurers like a guttural form of low common. The gloop whimpers, then croaks back in similar cant. This offensive exchange continues for some time. The adventurers share curious glances with one another. Elwyn thinks she makes out something sounding like puddle and key pow door.
What's he saying, Gorfthistle?
Asks a fascinated Elwyn.
I've never heard speech like that.
The adept speaks only common and the language of law, but has always been interested in other languages.
I'm trying to ask him about SOOTMURK's lair,
answers the gnome.
It's a bit slow in the going, as I'm not fluent in gross swamp monster, but I think we're making some progress.
The odious conversation continues for several more minutes, with the gloop cowering now and then as GORFTHISTLE appears to threaten him with Butch. In this exchange, Elwyn can hear something about a tree boot and a rich whale. As the cleric is pondering what kind of boot a tree might wear, or how a whale could be wealthy, GORFTHISTLE begins to nod with understanding. Leaning back against the wall, he gestures to Taurish. The barbarian obliges by rebinding the gloop's mouth.
I think I understand,
says the gnome, patting Butch on his mechanical head.
The shaft in the southern wall of the foundry leads to SOOTMURK's lair, which the gloops call her puddle. The northern end of the shaft is guarded by gloops and used as a tribute checkpoint.
Tree boot!
Exclaims Elwyn triumphantly.
A tree boot checkpoint!
The cleric's companions cannot help but smile.
Yes,
says GORFTHISTLE.
The southern end of the shaft, near SOOTMURK's lair, puddle, is used as a sort of ritual preparation.
Rich whale?
Exclaims Elwyn again.
A rich whale preparation.
Realizing she's interrupting, she quickly covers her mouth.
Aye,
answers GORFTHISTLE.
The miserable gloops worship SOOTMURK, as I've suspected. They come from all over the marsh to see her, like zealots on a pilgrimage. Captain Gullian's guards collect tribute from them before letting them in to see the worm.
Thereby encouraging the gloops of the marsh to rob travellers on the King's Road,
says Elwyn.
Aye,
adds Owen, glancing sadly at the dead prisoner chained to the wall.
to say nothing of the sacrifices they bring her.
Angharad looks at the gloop, then at GORFTHISTLE.
Do only gloops worship her?
I'm frankly not sure,
answers the gnome.
But I get the impression anyone with enough treasure can have access to her.
Angharad,
says Owen pensively.
You're not suggesting we go speak to SOOTMURK?
Well,
interjects Yari thoughtfully.
if we can pay our way to see her, why not bring her a gift?
Taurish grins.
The Iron Man? Wheel him down to her on the dolly and activate him. That'd be a delightful surprise.
GORFTHISTLE shakes his head.
Every gloop in this shrine is terrified of the automaton of MULVIS. They'd never let us get it near them.
Well,
says Angharad.
I was mostly curious, but the idea would be to see and speak to her.
Why, Angharad?
Asks Elwyn.
She's a creature of chaos. She cannot be trusted.
Dragons are ancient creatures,
Angharad replies.
They know secrets useful to one such as me, and are often well versed in magic.
Well, a visit to her would give us a better idea of the layout of that shaft,
says Yari.
and her puddle. This way, at least, we'd not be launching a blind attack.
Owen hesitates.
Is that a sufficient reason to march down a well-guarded tunnel and chat with a dragon?
Actually, it may be,
says GORFTHISTLE. Reaching into his vest, he produces a scroll. Angharad recognizes it as the one he retrieved from the accordion in his secret hideout.
Do tell.
Says the magic user, intrigued.
Somewhere in this shrine is a catacombs,
Says GORFTHISTLE.
My research suggests the catacombs house the resting corpses of King Bombfluke and the most revered members of the cult of MULVIS.
You're after his crown, if I recall.
Says Yari.
The lost crown of King Bombfluke.
I am,
Agrees GORFTHISTLE. He gestures at the gloop.
Based on what our friend here says, I believe them to be south of here, through what the gloops call the keep-out door.
Keep our door.
Angharad says it at the same time as Elwyn, giving the girl a playful wink and smile.
Well,
Considers Taurish.
will this crown help defeat the dragon?
No,
Admits the gnome.
Then why pursue the catacombs now?
Asks Elwyn.
Can't the crown wait until after we deal with SOOTMURK and her gloops?
Aye,
Agrees Taurish.
if anything. Seems like freeing that magic sword in the foundry would suit a better purpose.
Yari shakes his head.
Any attempt to heat up that iron will make an awful racket.
GORFTHISTLE leans in close to the adventurers.
if I can get to the catacombs,
He intimates in a conspiratorial whisper.
I intend to use this scroll to raise the cult of MULVIS from the dead and unleash them on the gloops.
A long silence overcomes the old storeroom, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of Butch's mechanically wagging tail.
Is that
Asks Angharad with wide green eyes.
a scroll of animate dead?
Well, technically a scroll of necromancy,
Says GORFTHISTLE.
with a silent G, as in gnome.
He giggles slightly, pleased by his own pun.
That's dark magic,
Says Elwyn, concerned.
How can you control such a chaotic spell?
It's a powerful spell to be sure,
Interjects Angarad.
but not chaotic per se. It doesn't bring the dead back to life so much as it animates their corpses to do the caster's bidding.
Like automatons.
Observes Yari dryly.
Precisely.
Says Gorfthistle.
There is unholiness in such a thing.
Says Owen.
And bad luck.
Says Tarish.
In many cases there is,
Says Gorfthistle.
but not in this case.
How so not?
Asks Elwyn.
Because
Answers Angarad on the gnome's behalf, comprehension registering on her delicate features.
it's their duty.
What is whose duty?
Asks Yari, puzzled.
The cult of MULVIS.
Says Gorfthistle.
Their descendants failed in defending the shrine from SOOTMURK. King Bombfluke and the cult of MULVIS interred in the catacombs will now have a chance to set things right.
Remember the chanting we heard yesterday.
Adds Angarad.
The spirits of the gnomes are still restless. Expelling the invaders may give them peace.
Who will control them?
Asks Elwyn, still hesitant.
This scroll can be used by any magic user and any gnome.
Says Gorfthistle proudly.
I happen to be both.
Angarad smiles.
I thought you might be. Your people are well known for their mastery of the school of illusion.
I dabble.
The gnome says with a wink.
So,
Says Yari, scratching his coal-black beard.
the idea is to raise these dead gnomes and turn them loose on the gloops? Under your command?
Yes.
Answers Gorfthistle.
But you need an idea of where to direct them.
Says Tarish.
Yes.
Answers Gorfthistle. Owen nods in contemporaneous understanding.
So we need to scout the tree boot checkpoint, the rich whale preparation, and SOOTMURK's puddle.
Yes.
Answers Gorfthistle.
Can your undead army withstand the might of the dragon?
Asks Tarish.
I've heard she breathes gouts of boiling grease.
Gorfthistle preens the curls of his ash-blonde mustaches.
Probably not,
He admits.
but they can likely deal with the gloops.
And that's where the automaton of MULVIS comes in.
Says Elwyn, her trepidation receding as the plan becomes clearer.
Exactly.
Says Gorfthistle.
We can't just activate the automaton of MULVIS and send it down the shaft. There's no telling what might happen. It will attack every living thing that's not a gnome. It could turn on you. Moreover, once activated, it only stays powered up for so long.
Owen nods slowly.
I understand. For all we know, it could spend so much time slaughtering gloops that it's out of energy before it reaches SOOTMURK.
So,
Says Yari.
what's our plan then?
The way I see it,
Says Tarish.
we're after two things. One is to scout SOOTMURK's lair. The other is to locate this hall of dead men. I mean dead gnomes. Sorry, Gorfthistle.
Gorfthistle shrugs so as to indicate that no offense has been taken.
Yes,
Says Angarad.
once we've done both of those things, Gorfthistle can raise the cult of MULVIS and direct them to attack the gloops.
Owen nods.
And once the gloops are out of the way, we wheel the metal golem down to her lair and activate it.
What could go wrong?
Asks Angarad with a wry smile.
I suppose we'll be the ones to visit SOOTMURK,
Posits Elwyn to Gorfthistle.
since you'll be needed in the catacombs to cast your spell.
There is another long pause.
I'll go.
Volunteers Angarad.
I would very much like to speak with a dragon.
No.
Blurts Tarish. It's a more abrupt protest than he would like to have made.
Your sorcery might be needed in the catacombs. I'll go.
He's right.
Says Yari.
Should something happen to Gorfthistle, you'd be needed to use his magical scroll. We can't risk putting you in danger.
I'll go with Tarish.
Says Owen.
Better to have two capable fighters should the gloops be less than accommodating of our visit.
Unless there are dangers in the catacombs,
Says Elwyn.
then we'd need a defender there.
The adept takes a deep breath.
I will go with Tarish. I am well armoured and can defend myself should anything happen.
Are you sure, Elwyn?
Asks Owen with concern in his hazel eyes.
Yes,
Answers the cleric confidently.
I have my Cure Light Wounds spell, which may be of use if we are attacked by the gloops.
I should go with you as well,
says Yari.
I'm the best scout for this sort of thing. I can spot construction tricks, detect new construction, sliding walls and sloping passages, and I can see in the dark, which will be useful if we're trying to get a layout of the shaft and the lair. Puddle.
You'll need gold,
says GORFTHISTLE.
to pay the guards at the tribute checkpoint, and to make a suitable offering to SOOTMURK if you meet her. I have 100 gold pieces.
He tosses Tarish a small pouch heavy with gold.
Sold,
Declares the warrior before anyone else can decline.
That should be plenty to get us past the tree boot checkpoint. And we have some treasure of our own to give the greased dragon as an offering.
Aye,
Agrees Yari.
we can always get it back later if our plan works.
You mean to say, if we don't die, dwarf?
Tarish laughs.
Humans have a rather casual relationship with death.
Angarad politely explains to GORFTHISTLE in an apparent apology for Tarish's manners.
Barbarians do anyway.
Notes Owen.
We do.
Declares Tarish proudly.
We do not fear death. We meet it happily when it calls us, on the field of battle singing songs of steel.
Yari nods.
He's not wrong. Our destinies are foretold, woven long ago at the looms of fate.
And guided are we by the loom of light?
Adds Elwyn, the aura of confidence around her growing by the moment.
Shall we get to work?
GORFTHISTLE smiles and pats his mechanical dog on the head.
See there, Butch? We're in good company.
The gnome stands and points to the exit in the southern wall of the storeroom.
According to the gloop, the keep-out door is that way. With luck, that's our entrance to the catacombs.
Elwyn, Tarish, and I will return to the foundry,
Yari says.
We'll enter the southbound shaft to the tribute checkpoint. How will they react to humans?
I think they're mostly interested in coins,
Says GORFTHISTLE.
though Elwyn may want to hide her holy symbol.
The adept looks down at herself.
Little need.
She giggles.
We're all covered in soot anyway.
Angarad likewise giggles.
I'm curious how I look with black hair, but I'll be avoiding mirrors until I can have a thorough bath.
The group shares short-lived laughter before Yari brings them back to business.
And when we're done scouting SOOTMURK's lair, we come find you in the catacombs.
Owen nods, watching Elwyn, Tarish, and Yari prepare to leave through the small corridor back to the foundry.
Be careful, friends.
He says, unaware that he's touching the diamond ring on his right ring finger.
Here.
Says Elwyn, stepping closer to Owen than she realizes, and smiling up at him with her large silver eyes.
Take the lantern. We can't have you lost in the dark without me, now can we?
Fear not, Owen.
Says Tarish, sparking a torch from his pack and handing it to Elwyn.
Yari and I promise to bring back your light-bearer hale and sound.
Chapter 6. Tunnel and Tomb. Turn 28. The Tribute Checkpoint. Elwyn, Tarish, and Yari walk together through the short hallway back to the foundry. Turning left, they follow its eastern wall south for a few paces before cutting southwest to approach the large tunnel in its southern wall. The shaft is circular like a large cylinder, about 10 feet in diameter, and choked with black grease and soot, ankle deep.
This must be what it's like to walk into a stovepipe,
Imagines Elwyn. Yari makes note of an iron door set in the eastern side of the tunnel, about 15 feet south of the foundry entrance. He also makes note of a brass hatch opposite that door on the western side of the tunnel. It's 4 feet high, has no identifiable handle or knob, and is engraved with a gnome guardian bearing a heart-shaped cavity in its chest. The dwarf gently elbows Elwyn, pointing at the hatch.
Remember GORFTHISTLE'S hideout?
Yes?
Says Elwyn.
I'd wager it's through that door with the gnome engraved on it.
About 15 feet south of the doors, 4 gloop guards stand on crates with spears in their hands and short swords on their hips. Around them are gaggled about a dozen gloop pilgrims, unarmed, petitioning the guards for passage with competing offerings of copper, rudimentary effigies, baskets of fish, and other simple items.
This must be the tribute checkpoint,
Whispers Tarish.
Anyone speak gloop?
Yari whispers facetiously to his companions as they fall in line unnoticed by their fellow pilgrims. At 6 feet tall, though, It's not long before Tarish is noticed looming over the small crowd of gloops in the light of Elwyn's torch.
"Human!"
croaks one of the guards, elbowing another and pointing at the warrior. A short series of guttural sounds, not unlike burps, erupts between them.
"Barbarian by the looks of him,"
croaks another guard.
Well,
Whispers Elwyn.
at least they speak common.
Sort of,
Whispers Yari.
"Barbarian or not,
Croaks another guard.
he'll like to have gold." "Aye,"
Agrees another guard.
"Captain Gullion wants gold, not baskets of rotted fish and copper coins."
The guards wave Tarish forward. The warrior wades through the gloop pilgrims, Elwyn and Yari right behind him. Based on the chorus of angry croaks that erupt from the crowd, the pilgrims are none too happy about the non-gloops cutting in line. The trio gathers in front of the guards, who, standing as they are on crates, glare down at them with bulging black eyes.
"You pay tribute,"
Demands one guard.
"Aye,
Croaks another guard.
50 gold for the whole lot."
Yari guffaws.
I'll give you a whole lot of my foot in your...
Of course.
Interjects Elwyn, cutting him off.
There is no price too high for the honor of visiting the, Dark One.
The croaking protests from the crowd of gloop pilgrims grow louder, and they begin to shove and jostle the adventurers like agitated ticket holders at the door of a sold-out concert. Exercising all his patience, Tarish counts out 50 gold pieces from GORFTHISTLE'S coin purse and places it in the flabby, webbed hand of one of the guards. This clear bribery further enrages the pilgrims, whose collective croaking makes it hard to hear anything.
"And your weapons,"
Demands another guard.
What?
Shouts Tarish, straining to hear over the din.
"No weapons passed here."
Croaks another guard.
You want to take our weapons?
Yari looks stunned.
This mob of frogs will tear us to pieces.
"This what?"
Croaks another guard, also straining to hear over the crowd.
It's useless.
Elwyn whispers in the dwarf's ear.
We'll be here forever arguing. Let's just turn them over.
Elwyn steps forward, handing over her mace and shield. Tarish and Yari hesitate, but something about the young cleric's gentle confidence compels them to follow her lead. Tarish begrudgingly surrenders his sword, shield, and 2 javelins. Yari surrenders his crossbow and Oryx handaxe, but keeps his dagger hidden inside his boot. The guards somehow manage to appear triumphant, having asserted their lawful authority over the non-gloop pilgrims. Following another series of croaks, one of the guards hops off his crate, moves the crate aside, and waves the trio through. Seeing the group unarmed, however, emboldens the enraged pilgrims. In a fever pitch of ear-splitting croaking that now sounds closer to the squealing of angry hogs, they attack. Combat. Round 1. The crowd rushes the 3 adventurers, pinning their backs to the 4 guards, who appear more interested in watching the fight than preventing it. Fortunately, only 3 gloops can attack at a time due to the width of the hallway, while the balance of gloops behind them are confined to crude jeers and the hurling of sundry malodorous refuse. Elwyn is slapped hard enough in the head to knock her back into the guards, who promptly shove her back toward her attackers. Tarish is kicked in the groin by the strong amphibian legs adapted for leaping. The powerful jaws of another gloop clamp down on Yari's arm and do not let go. The dwarf curses as he feels something pop. It is all the adventurers can do to cover up and prevent themselves from being trampled as the mob of furious gloops tries to maul them. The 4 guards hop up and down on their crates, croaking with bloodlust. Combat. Round 2. Tarish lashes out with a vicious overhand right aimed at the gloop who dared kick him in the groin. His fist lands squarely in the monster's bulbous black eye, shattering it like a ripe mission fig. The creature falls back, squealing, only to have another take its place. This one claws at the barbarian, but he parries the scratching blows inside its wrists and avoids any damage. Though a healer at heart, Elwyn is not untrained for battle. The athletic cleric regains her balance quickly and covers her head with her plate mail vambraces. The defensive maneuvering avails her, as she feels clawed hands scrape harmlessly against the steel protecting her forearms. Then, wielding her torch in tight, controlled arcs, she drives the maddened crowd back a few paces. Biting back the pain in his forearm, Yari reaches down with his free hand and draws his dagger from his boot. He brings it up into the belly of the gloop clamped onto him, then pulls it over in a curving motion. The maneuver completely unzips the hapless creature, and its guts slip out onto the soot-covered floor like buttered noodles dumped on a bed of cracked pepper. Combat. Round 3. While Yari's gruesome display causes the guards to hop up and down gleefully, it's too much for the closest pilgrims. They are now rethinking the wisdom of having gotten carried away by their indignation, and they begin to fight to get away from the companions. Still enraged, Tarish grabs the nearest gloop with both hands and slams it like a wicker door against the wall of the tunnel. There is the sickening sound of broken cartilage as the internally shattered creature slides down the greasy wall in a heap. At this point, the guards have had their fill and begin poking their spears at the remaining agitated pilgrims. Elwyn puts her arm around Yari, who is now propping up his injured limb with the butt of his dagger, and escorts him through the opened makeshift crate gate. Tarish glares at the crowd, blue eyes brooding with all the malice of an auroch in a slaughter pen, and slowly backs through the opening behind his companions.
"If any of you frog so much as ribbits," he promises, "I swear by Tutatis I will spit roast every last one of your legs for my supper."
Turning to the nearest guard, who looks like it's about to demand Yari's dagger, the barbarian clarifies,
"And I mean any of you."
The guard decides that there's probably no harm in allowing the dwarf to keep his dagger. Turn 28. The Keep-Out Door. With Butch out front, Gorfthistle leads Angarad and Owen through the portal in the southern wall of the storeroom. The hallway runs south for about 35 feet before opening up in the eastern end of the northern wall of a strange room. It's roughly 30 feet east to west and 20 feet north to south. It reeks of embalming fluid. Tattered tapestries hang on the walls depicting gnomish anatomical diagrams. There are 2 additional exits to the room. One is a portal in the middle of the chamber's western wall. The other is a closed, heavy stone door in the middle of the southern wall. There are 4 low workbenches lined up neatly in the center of the room, engraved with gnomish funerary pictographs. Curiously, there is a bedroll on each workbench and, on the workbench nearest the adventurers, a snoring gloop. Gorfthistle holds up a hand, signaling Angarad and Owen to stop. Putting his finger to his lips, he quietly points to the sleeping gloop. Angarad and Owen nod. Gorfthistle produces a small sickle, mimes a thumping motion with it, and then holds his wrists together so as to indicate binding. Angarad and Owen nod again. The gnome quietly approaches the gloop, raises the small sickle over his head, and brings the pommel of it down hard on the toad-like skull with a thump. The gloop does not wake up.
"Is he out?"
asks Owen.
"Or dead?"
Gorfthistle holds his ear to the widely placed nostrils.
"He's out."
"All right,"
says Owen.
"I'll go get some of Tarish's rope we used to bind the other gloop."
While the knight returns to the storeroom, Angarad and Gorfthistle explore the chamber.
"This looks like an embalming room,"
says Angarad, approaching the anatomical diagrams.
"which would explain the smell."
Gorfthistle nods for a moment, and then shakes his head ruefully.
"Gloops have no respect for the dead. It looks like they've been using this room as a barracks."
The gnome approaches the nearest workbench and examines the funerary pictographs etched into its surface.
"These symbols depict the gnome's beliefs about the afterlife."
His gaze shifts back to the workbenches.
"It's a shame to see their sacred traditions defiled in this way."
Angarad's large eyes trace the intricate patterns on the tapestries.
"These diagrams depict their understanding of anatomy and the process of mummification. It seems they had a deep reverence for the preservation of the body."
The pair gingerly look through the workbench drawers, discovering all manner of urns, jars, and tools used in mummification and embalming. Gorfthistle holds up one clear container.
Look here. These are gnome hearts in this jar, but there's also this strange device.
What is it?
Asks Angarad, her curiosity about the process of mummification overpowering her queasiness at the biological realities of it.
It looks like a heart too,
says Gorfthistle, unscrewing the jar.
but it's brass.
Angarad nods, taking a step back and bringing her slender hand up to her nose.
Of course it is,
She says vaguely. Gorfthistle unceremoniously turns the container over. The gnome hearts pour out onto the workbench like pickled eggs dumped from a barroom jar. He picks up the brass object and holds it up to the light. It is heart-shaped and is the same size as the real gnome hearts with which it was stored, but has clockwork gears on the outside. There is a hinged lid at the top, which Gorfthistle opens, revealing an empty compartment inside.
What do you suppose it's for?
Asks Angarad, taking another step back. Her queasiness is now overpowering her curiosity.
It's a container of some sort,
Says Gorfthistle.
It looks like you can put one of the gnome hearts inside, but to what end I'm not sure.
At this point, Owen returns with a length of cord he cut from the rope with which Tarish bound the gloop in the storeroom. He, too, covers his nose. Looking at Gorfthistle's fluid-covered hands and the pile of hearts on the table, the squire starts to ask a question, appears to think better of it, shakes his head, and occupies himself with tying up the unconscious gloop. Angarad points down the corridor in the western wall of the embalming chamber.
There's a large iron door over here.
Gorfthistle stows the clockwork heart in his pack, trots about 15 feet down the passage, and approaches the door.
This would be the direction of the shaft between the foundry and SOOTMURK's lair. I wonder if this door opens into it.
He presses his ear to the door. His sharp, gnomish features crinkle with concern.
I hear a commotion,
What kind of commotion?
Asks Owen, approaching the door.
Sounds like quite a row,
Says the gnome.
I hear a lot of croaking, but I also hear a deep human voice.
Tarish?
Speculates a concerned Angarad.
And Yari and Elwyn.
Says Owen. Drawing his sword, he reaches for the door.
They could be in trouble.
Wait!
Shouts Gorfthistle, placing himself between the squire and the door.
If you open this door, the entire hive of gloops could pour in on us.
Step aside, gnome.
Says Owen through clenched teeth.
I am no coward.
We'll be killed!
Pleads Gorfthistle.
Our mission will fail!
Owen's face is at once burning with emotion and cold with impassiveness.
I'll not ask again, sir.
There was deadly seriousness in his tone.
Sir Owen,
Calls a feminine voice. There is something otherworldly about it that commands attention. Owen turns around to see Angarad. Though covered head to toe in soot, her large green eyes are as luminescent as ever, and the ethereal beauty of the elves cannot be concealed by the grime with which she is now covered. Owen is enchanted, unable to look away. The elf seems to almost float toward him until her toes touch his boots.
we've sworn ourselves to our part.
Her voice is soft and gentle. Her eyes are large, emerald pools in which the squire can almost see his own reflection as he stares down into them.
If we open that door, we will have broken our oaths, to dire consequences. We must trust in our companions.
Owen is nonplussed. He looks down for a space, then up again, nodding slowly. Straightening his back, he assumes his characteristically gallant stance, the conflict within resolved, or, at least, delayed.
You are right, lady.
He says with a slight bow.
Please forgive me for my imprudence.
With still a bit of shame on his brow, he turns to Gorfthistle.
And for my outburst.
Gorfthistle looks relieved. He pats the squire on the forearm and smiles.
It's quite all right, lad. I understand.
The gnome returns his ear to the door for a moment, then smiles.
See? All quiet now. I'm sure everything is fine.
The trio re-enter the embalming room and examine the large stone door in the southern wall. On it is scrawled, Noom Evil Goost, Keep Out. Angarad reads the primitive scrabble.
Here is Elwyn's keep-out door.
She says, smiling softly.
The entrance to the catacombs?
Asks Owen pensively.
Aye,
says GORFTHISTLE in a voice marked with both trepidation and reverence.
the resting hall of the noble dead.
Turn 29. The Ritual Preparation. Battered and bruised, but not seriously harmed, Elwyn, Tarish, and Yari stumble past the tribute checkpoint.
Is everyone all right?
Asks Tarish, bending down slightly to relieve the pain in his groin.
I am.
Says Elwyn, touching the side of her head where she was struck in the mob attack.
Yari, how about you?
She asks, reaching out to inspect the dwarf's bitten arm.
Felt a little pop,
Yari mutters.
but it still works.
I can try to heal it for you.
Offers Elwyn.
Thank you.
Says the wiry dwarf.
But I don't think it's serious. Let's save your powers for when we might have greater need of them.
The group continues south down the shaft, the croaks of the angry pilgrims still marauding the darkness behind them. About 15 feet farther, they reach another door on the eastern side of the tunnel. Made of solid stone, it's outfitted with an iron knock and a keyhole. A large red X has been painted on it. It is otherwise unadorned.
Where do you suppose that leads?
Asks Tarish.
It's possible it leads to GORFTHISTLE'S catacombs.
Guesses Yari.
Or another part of the shrine. It's hard to know at this point.
The X likely means they don't want anyone opening it.
Reasons Elwyn. Yari nods.
I've been keeping track of our steps and the locations of the doors. When we find our way to the others, I'll have a good layout of the entire dungeon.
About 30 feet south of the stone door, the group arrives at a large iron double door. It's circular and about 10 feet in diameter. 3 gloops, clad in filthy robes, stand on crates like the guards in the north of the tunnel. Before them are gathered 4 gloop pilgrims. The robed gloops are muttering some low chant and dabbing grease on the foreheads of the pilgrims.
This looks like a ceremonial rite.
Whispers Elwyn.
Or rather, a mockery of one.
For what purpose?
Asks Yari in a whisper.
It's likely a sacrament before having an audience with SOOTMURK.
Whispers Elwyn.
Whereas in my order, we are required to be clean before invoking the Orlog. These poor wretches are required to be unclean.
Once all 4 gloop pilgrims have been duly daubed in grease, one of the robed gloops raps on the enormous iron doors. One of them swings open, revealing a black void beyond. The 4 gloops waddle through, and the door is closed again.
No squeaking,
mutters Yari.
What?
Asks Tarish.
The doors don't squeak,
Says Yari.
All the grease.
Tarish suppresses a chuckle.
Just follow my lead here.
Elwyn commands sternly. The adept approaches the 3 gloops, bows her head, drops to her knees, then raises her head again with eyes closed. One of the gloops then smears a large dollop of grease across her forehead. Tarish and then Yari imitate Elwyn as best they can, each receiving the ceremonial anointment required for an audience with SOOTMURK. The iron doors are opened, and the 3 adventurers walk into the dragon's lair. Turn 29. The Catacombs. The stone door, while not locked, is extremely heavy, and takes the combined strength of Owen and GORFTHISTLE to pull it to. The area beyond is dark and dreamlike. A strange, glowing green fog swirls within. It is immediately clear that no living foot has been set here in ages untold, but the curious smell of mint hangs in the air. Angharad, Owen, and GORFTHISTLE stand staring into the eddying mist for some time, mesmerized, when a large brass firefly floats toward the door from the south. Its mechanical wings buzz quietly, and a soft blue light glows from its thorax. It either does not notice the adventurers or is not interested in them. It floats north toward the group and turns to its right, flying slowly east and out of the trio's vision as framed by the door. Butch begins to bark in excited bursts that sound like a cuckoo clock stuck on midnight. Before GORFTHISTLE can grab his collar, the brass terrier leaps through the door to chase the strange firefly down the eastbound passage, disappearing into the swirling green darkness of the catacombs. GORFTHISTLE follows Butch, evidently undeterred by the surreal darkness or what dangers it might hold. Angarad and Owen exchange glances before the squire steps through the door, shield and lantern raised high, with the magic user close behind. The green mist makes it difficult to see more than 10 feet away, even with the lantern light. One passage runs due south from the door, another runs due east. There is a 10-foot deep alcove just to the right of the door, on its western side. Owen shines the lantern into the alcove as Angarad steps in to inspect it. A 4-foot-tall iron casket is secured to the back wall and bolted shut. There is an inscription in Gnomish on a plaque near the top.
Buncle the Scribe,
says Angarad, reading the inscription.
One of GORFTHISTLE'S noble dead?
Asks Owen.
I believe so,
says Angarad.
It appears we've reached the tomb of the cult of MULVIS.
The two walk carefully south, staying close together as they make their way through the strange green mist.
Why do I smell mint?
Whispers Owen. He's uncomfortable breaking the heavy silence of the catacombs, though Butch's cuckoo clock-like bark can be heard softly echoing somewhere in the distant darkness.
I don't know. Perhaps a preserving agent for the corpses?
Speculates Angarad quietly.
But this fog reminds me of the mist I saw during my watch in the marsh last night. I wonder if they're somehow connected.
The middle of the eastern wall of the southbound passage, to Owen's left, is engraved with Gnomish script.
Can you make this out?
Asks the squire, pointing at the engraved writing.
It says, "Those who generously have given, MULVIS protects,"
answers the medium with a furrowed brow.
It appears to repeat over and over.
About 10 feet farther down the passage, on the right-hand side, a corridor branches off to the west.
Based on what GORFTHISTLE said about the westward hallway in the embalming room,
reasons Owen.
This corridor also heads toward the shaft between the foundry and SOOTMURK's lair.
The pair decides to explore the corridor, which ends at a large stone door, outfitted with an iron knock and a keyhole, about 30 feet to the west. Angarad holds her ear to it before shaking her head.
It's solid stone,
she says.
No chance of hearing anything.
Right,
says Owen.
Let's head back.
As they return east down the corridor, they hear the approaching echo of Butch's barking. They see the glowing blue firefly slowly float by from the south side of the north-south corridor. It is followed by Butch, who is jumping up and down trying to catch it. The mechanical firefly does not seem concerned. Both automatons disappear from view as they pass north across the junction. Arriving at the intersection, the pair sees GORFTHISTLE approaching from the south.
What news, GORFTHISTLE?
Asks Owen. The gnome points to the south and then the north.
The catacombs are essentially one circuit, a single hallway that runs in a rectangle, with its long sides on the north-south axis and its short sides on the east-west axis. Put another way, it's a large rectangular tomb with a large rectangular block in the middle of it.
Owen and Angarad nod.
The outer walls,
GORFTHISTLE continues in his curiously strong voice, now imbued with a hint of excitement,
are lined with alcoves. I count 10 total. In 9 of the 10 alcoves are caskets. One of the alcoves is empty. There's a 10th casket standing alone in a separate alcove, thrice as large as the others, in the middle of the southernmost wall.
The gnome's bright blue eyes appear almost white in the green mist as he rubs his hands together giddily.
I believe that casket holds King Bomfluk.
Angarad nods.
What do we do now? Open the caskets?
Yes,
says GORFTHISTLE, removing another map from his vest.
But we must be careful. Some of them are trapped. I know how to disarm the traps, but you should not tamper with them until I do. I've marked the safe ones on this map.
He hands Owen the map.
Right,
nods the squire, holding the map up to his lantern.
We'll open the ones marked as safe on this map, while you disarm the ones that are trapped.
Yes,
replies GORFTHISTLE.
And you're sure that you've marked the ones that aren't trapped on this map correctly?
Asks Angarad.
Absolutely,
answers the gnome confidently.
I'm almost totally sure.
Chapter 7. SOOTMURK. Turn 30. The lair of the grease dragon is a large grotto shaped roughly like the inside of a chicken egg. Its long axis is about 60 feet east to west, and its short axis is about 40 feet north to south. The ceiling and floor are concave and span about 50 feet apart from one another at their respective apexes. Colosseum-style benches are carved into the sloping sandstone walls. On some of the benches sit about a dozen gloop pilgrims, staring at a pond-sized puddle of grease in the middle of the grotto. A monstrous beast bathes in the center of the puddle. With a body about 8 feet in diameter, it looks like a gargantuan salamander with 12 legs and a massive newt-like head. The creature is laying on its back, like an overturned viper basking in the sun, while 10 gloop guards preen and massage its serpentine body with what seem to be mops dipped in grease. Though much of the creature's bulk is buried in the muck, Yari guesses it must be 50 feet long. As Elwyn, Tarish, and Yari stand staring at the monster, a large gloop steps forward, flanked by 4 smaller gloops wearing studded leather armor and bearing shields and spears. The large gloop stands a full head taller than the others and wears a soot-blackened cape, an iron cap, and an ill-fitting chainmail hauberk, out of the bottom of which protrudes an enormous belly. From some belt hidden by the belly hangs a large iron key ring and a curved sword.
"Hold, humans!" croaks the large gloop. "Who are you to seek audience with her sootiness, the Dark One?"
Captain Gullion, I presume,
mutters Yari, eyeing the gloop's obviously looted trappings. The gloop turns his large head to the side so as to behold the dwarf with one bulbous eye.
"You presume correct. And who is it that dares do the presuming?"
We are mere pilgrims,
interjects Elwyn, stepping in front of her companions and curtsying gracefully.
Like so many, we have heard the legends of, her sootiness, the Dark One. We have come to pay tribute in hopes of basking in her, greasiness.
Captain Gullion aims both black eyes at Elwyn and blinks.
"Yes, well, what tribute have you brought her spaciousness?"
Tarish starts to answer.
"We paid 50 gold to the—"
Captain Gullion cuts off the barbarian with a grotesque series of croaks that makes Elwyn think of a bullfrog in a coughing fit. Tarish exchanges a glance with Yari. Concluding the histrionics, Captain Gullion leans in close to the adventurers and rephrases his question in quieter tones.
"I mean to ask, what gift have you brought to give her specifically?"
Yari nods, understanding. He pulls his platinum ingot, wrapped in a flaxen rag, from his pack and hands it to Elwyn. As the cleric steps forward, Tarish whispers to Yari.
"SOOTMURK doesn't know Gullion is collecting tribute in the tunnel."
"Or at least Gullion thinks she doesn't, though,"
whispers the dwarf in return, keeping his lips as still as possible. Elwyn positions herself between Captain Gullion and her companions and unwraps the ingot.
We bring this humble gift for the, Fuliginous One,
she announces, in a voice she hopes is loud enough to conceal the hushed exchange between Tarish and Yari. There is a collective gasp from Gullion and his 4 guards. They stare, completely stunned, at the ingot.
"Is that gold?"
asks the captain, greed slobbering from his impossibly wide mouth.
No,
declares Elwyn, making her voice louder in hopes of drawing the dragon's attention.
This gift, Captain Gullion, is pure platinum.
A stentorian sucking sound reverberates throughout the grotto as the legendary grease dragon SOOTMURK rolls over and lifts herself from her giant puddle of muck. Every gloop in the lair frantically genuflects as her serpentine body raises its massive, newt-like head until it towers halfway to the vaulted ceiling. 2 primordial eyes peer down at the cleric, who immediately drops to one knee, bows her head, and holds up the ingot like a supplicant with a ceremonial offering. More than a little bit awed by the dragon, and following Elwyn's lead, Tarish and Yari drop to one knee and bow their heads as well.
At last,
The dragon purrs. Her voice is soft and dangerous, like thunder approaching from the distance.
Someone appears to have brought me a worthy gift. I've long grown tired of the mundane filth my well-meaning but poverty-stricken subjects call offerings.
Her head snakes its way through the chamber until it hovers right over Elwyn and gazes upon her with amber eyes the size of dinner plates.
Tell me, little dark-haired girl, what do you seek from me?
Captain Gullion's black eyes widen with shock as the dragon addresses the adventurers directly.
Your oleaginousness,
he croaks, bowing deeply.
These pilgrims seek only to bask in your glory and offer their humble bestowment.
SOOTMURK ignores the interjection, lowering her head enough to bring her nostrils level with Elwyn's offering. The adept remains in the supplicant position, still holding the ingot above her head, and speaks clearly.
O Carboniferous One, we are but lowly adventurers who have heard the tales of the legendary grease dragon, SOOTMURK. We come to make an offering and behold your black beauty for ourselves.
Yari uses this opportunity to scan the chamber from beneath the cowl of his hood, doing his best to make as many mental notes as possible as to its layout and inhabitants.
Adventurers?
asks SOOTMURK in a deep, velvety voice. Her massive head sways like a dancing cobra.
If you are adventurers, then surely you are not here just to admire my beauty.
The eyes of every guard and pilgrim in the lair now watch the exchange. Captain Gullion shifts ponderously, not sure how to handle this unexpected turn of events.
Your lubriciousness,
he stammers.
Perhaps they merely seek your wisdom or guidance.
Elwyn's brow furrows. She regrets announcing herself as an adventurer. Hoping her expression is veiled by the mane of black hair spilled forward from her bowed head, she chooses her next words carefully.
O mighty SOOTMURK, we believe you will one day reign over the lands beyond the marsh. We seek to ingratiate ourselves and make our services available to you, should you find us worthy.
Oh?
Purrs SOOTMURK dryly.
And what services could tiny mortals such as yourselves offer one such as me?
A loud, nervous belch escapes Captain Gullion. He looks to be thinking frantically.
Oh, besmirched one, if these non-gloops are truly adventurers, perhaps they are brave enough to venture into the catacombs.
Tarish and Yari again exchange glances. SOOTMURK looks at her captain for the first time. There is a terrifying silence in the grotto.
The catacombs,
says SOOTMURK finally.
An intriguing idea, Captain Gullion. I've long desired the treasure said to lie therein, but I am too large, and your soldiers are too cowardly to retrieve them.
Gullion belches nervously again, SOOTMURK's amber eyes once again alight on the party.
What say you, my little adventurers? Retrieving the treasures of the cult of MULVIS from within the gnomish hall of the dead would go a long way toward ingratiating yourselves with me.
Of course, O fronded one,
answers Elwyn.
We do not fear the catacombs and would relish the opportunity to prove ourselves worthy to one so, creosoteous as yourself.
Splendid,
says the grease dragon. She finally removes the platinum ingot from Elwyn's hand with the foremost of her 12 clawed limbs and drops it unceremoniously into her puddle.
Captain Gullion will escort you.
With that, SOOTMURK slithers back into the black pond. Elwyn, Tarish, and Yari wait until the dragon is settled into her bath before rising to follow Captain Gullion and his 4 guards out of the double doors to the north. As the doors open, SOOTMURK calls out softly,
Succeed and you will be rewarded. Fail and you will be devoured.
Turn 31. Elwyn, Tarish, and Yari follow Captain Gullion and his 4 guards north through the large double doors and into the ritual preparation area of the shaft. Seeing the captain, the 3 robed gloops stationed there immediately hop off their crates and stand at attention. Several gloop pilgrims bow respectfully to their chieftain. Gullion orders 2 of his guards to fetch the adventurers' weapons from the tribute checkpoint before leading them back to the large stone door marked with a red X on the eastern side of the tunnel.
"This is the entrance to the tomb of the gnomes,"
the captain declares. When the 2 guards return with the weapons, they stand at attention for further orders from the captain. Gullion blinks at the pair for a moment before croaking,
"Well, what are you waiting for? Give these bold treasure hunters their weapons. These fine people are on a mission for the Atramentus One herself."
The 2 gloop guards hastily distribute the weapons to the adventurers. Captain Gullion rubs webbed fingers across his amphibious mouth as his black eyes dart about. Then he claps Tarish on the back.
"Well, my friends,"
he booms in a loud, jovial voice,
"I wish you the best of luck in there."
Tarish and Yari yet again exchange glances.
"Thank you, Captain,"
responds Tarish.
"If anyone can get those treasures, it's you, brave lot,"
shouts the gloop chieftain. He removes one of the large iron keys, inserts it into the keyhole, and turns it with a ringing click. The bulbous black eyes shift between all 3 adventurers before Gullion leans in close to speak, now in hushed tones.
"Listen, once you get the treasure, don't return to this door. There's another door on the north side of the catacombs. Use that door if you would."
Why?
asks Elwyn.
"Well,"
says Gullion,
"the pilgrims in this tunnel fear the catacombs, you see. They're a superstitious lot. They think cursed wights dwell in there. If you open that door from the inside, they'll think you're monsters. It'll give them an awful fright. And I could have a bit of chaos on my hands. You appreciate that, don't you?"
Tarish quickly mutters something to Yari in a language Elwyn doesn't understand, but recognizes as one often shared by mercenaries and thieves. The dwarf quickly mutters something back.
"What's that?"
asks Gullion, tilting his toad head toward the whispering pair.
"Of course, Captain,"
answers Tarish quickly.
"We'll exit through the northern door. We don't want to cause you any trouble."
If a toad could smile, Captain Gullion would be smiling. He claps Tarish on the back again.
"Thank you, my boy. You 2 look accustomed to the soldiering life. I knew you'd understand the finer points of personnel management."
The 2 guards grab the iron knock and heave the door open, revealing the swirling green mist beyond.
"Well then,"
cheers Gullion, clapping all 3 adventurers on the back and nearly shoving them through the door.
"Off you go. Godspeed and good luck, treasure hunters. We're really pulling for you. Get the treasures and bring them back to SOOTMURK."
Once all 3 adventurers are through the door, the guards slam it shut. The instant it is closed, Elwyn sees Yari spin around and slide something into the keyhole before pressing his ear against it.
"Did you get it?"
asks Tarish.
"Aye,"
answers the dwarf.
"Well done,"
says Tarish.
What's going on?
asks Elwyn, puzzled. Yari turns around.
"I jammed a lockpick into the keyhole."
Why?
asks Elwyn. Her silver eyes are wide with interest.
"Gullion wants to be absolutely sure that we must exit through that northern door, so he locked this one behind us,"
responds Tarish.
"Or he would have if Yari didn't jam the lock."
Elwyn looks back and forth between Tarish and Yari with the burning curiosity of someone eager to be let in on the latest gossip.
Well, that's because he's worried that we'll scare the gloops in the main shaft by opening this door. Right?
Tarish shakes his head.
"That's not the real reason."
Elwyn's youthful face is at once dark with apprehension and bright with fascination.
Then why does he want to be, quote, absolutely sure that we must exit through that northern door?
So that he can kill us there,
Yari says casually. The young cleric furrows her brow.
Why would Captain Gullion want to kill us? As far as he knows, we're on a mission to bring his queen treasure from the catacombs.
If we return to SOOTMURK with treasure,
explains Tarish,
what would become of Gullion? He's terrified that he'd lose his status as SOOTMURK's right hand, gloop.
Aye,
nods Yari.
So, he can't let us return to her alive. He suggested the whole plan to SOOTMURK, hoping we'll die in the catacombs. But if we make it out, he'll be ready to ambush us.
If we don't have treasure when he kills us,
continues Tarish,
he'll simply tell SOOTMURK we never escaped the tombs.
And if we do have treasure when he kills us,
adds Yari,
he'll tell her we never came out, so he went in and got it himself.
Elwyn's shining eyes widen again with realization before she furrows her brow once more.
But why the northern door? Why not just kill us at this one?
Witnesses?
Yari and Tarish say it together. Yari continues.
He made a big show of letting us into the catacombs so the pilgrims in the shaft would see him do SOOTMURK's bidding. But he wouldn't want it getting out that he murdered his mistress's appointed treasure hunters.
Asclepius, that's quite a bit of mischief,
swears Elwyn. She regards Tarish and Yari.
That language you two spoke, if you don't mind, what language was that?
Neutral,
answers Yari.
Our alignment tongue,
adds Tarish.
I knew it,
Elwyn proclaims triumphantly. She pauses a moment, reflecting.
Well, I appreciate what you've done very much. Sometimes we who serve the law are not in the best position to understand the minds of those who serve chaos.
And you did a fine job with SOOTMURK,
says Tarish, smiling at the dark-haired girl. Yari nods.
Were it me or Tarish speaking in there, that black worm would have boiled us alive.
Elwyn blushes.
Thank you for your kind words.
All right,
says Tarish.
Let's find the others. This green fog isn't going to make it easy.
The trio set off eastward down the passage. As they near what looks like the junction of a north-south hallway, a strange sight greets them. A large mechanical insect with a glowing blue abdomen floats north across the junction from its southern side. An automaton terrier follows close behind, repeatedly jumping up and down and apparently trying to catch the insect.
Is that Butch?
Asks Elwyn, peering through the green mist.
I think so,
says Tarish.
But what is that thing he's chasing?
I've no idea,
says Yari.
But let's follow them. Maybe Butch will lead us back to GORFTHISTLE and the others.
Chapter 8. The Cult of MULVIS. Turn 30. Using GORFTHISTLE'S map, Angarad and Owen approach the alcove located nearest to the northeastern corner of the catacombs. Like the other alcoves on this side of the catacombs, it's about 5 feet deep and has a 4-foot-tall iron casket affixed to its back wall that's hinged on one side and sealed shut on the other side by a single large bolt.
Prince Welcome,
says Angarad, reading the gnomish engraving.
Would be handy to have Yari here,
says Owen, eyeing the bolt dubiously. Angarad nods, rechecking GORFTHISTLE'S map.
How should we do this?
Owen shrugs, handing Angarad the lantern.
I guess just stand behind me and hope for the best.
Holding his shield in front of him, the squire slowly works the bolt free. Doing so triggers no trap. The mechanical firefly slowly buzzes by in the corridor behind the pair with Butch still in tow, jumping up and biting at it unsuccessfully.
Hope springs eternal,
says the elf maiden, watching Butch's persistent attempts to catch the little automaton.
Ready?
Asks Owen.
Yes,
answers Angarad. Still holding his shield in front of him, Owen opens the casket to reveal the mummified body of a gnome. It wears armor made out of what looks like snail shells and holds a curiously well-preserved spear with a red oak shaft and ivory tip.
Well,
breathes Angarad.
It wasn't trapped.
Right,
says Owen, relieved.
That's one of 5.
Angarad inspects the armor and spear without touching them.
I don't suppose we should tamper with the items in these caskets at this point.
Agreed,
says Owen.
Prince Welfham may need his armaments for the battle GORFTHISTLE has planned for him.
Studying the map, the pair moves to the casket in the next alcove to the south.
Princess Oxtwig,
says Angarad, reading the inscription.
I wonder if she was Prince Welfham's sister,
says Owen.
It stands to reason,
says Angarad.
Perhaps they are the children of King Bomfluk.
The medium and squire use the same procedure to open this casket, Owen bracing his shield in front of him, and Angarad standing behind with the lantern. The casket opens without incident. Inside is a mummified female gnome in an elaborate floral print gown, clutching a red oak flute in her right hand.
Can you tell how old she was?
Asks Owen. Angarad shakes her head.
No, but it seems she was a musician based on her flute. I saw a large brass musical instrument in the foundry, one of those strange horn devices with a lot of pipes, buttons, and a flared end. I always struggle to remember the name.
A tuba?
Asks Owen.
Yes,
says Angarad, smiling.
That's it, a tuba.
They're awful,
says Owen. Angarad smiles again, looking at Princess Oxtwig.
Well, I am partial to the flute myself.
The next casket marked on GORFTHISTLE'S map is 2 alcoves to the south.
This one is Billiard the Tight-Fisted,
Angarad says, after examining the inscription.
As in thrifty?
Wonders Owen aloud, slowly removing the bolt sealing the casket shut.
Is that what tight-fisted means in common?
Asks Angarad.
It seems that gnomes share the human propensity for idioms.
Aye, we have a lot of them,
says Owen, preparing his shield and looking back at Angarad. When she nods, he opens the casket. Inside is a plainly dressed mummified gnome with a scowl on his face. A few gold coins are clenched tightly in each of his hands. Angarad raises an eyebrow.
Perhaps it was literal, although he is clenching coins, so perhaps he was thrifty as well.
How many caskets left?
Asks Owen. Angarad looks at the map.
2, both on the other side, just south of the hallway we took to the stone door.
The pair follows the east-west passage on the southern side of the catacombs, passing the casket GORFTHISTLE believes to belong to King Bomfluk on their left. They arrive in the southern end of the north-south passage, down which they walked when they initially entered the catacombs. A loud bang rings out from the northern end of the corridor, followed by coughing. Angarad and Owen share worried glances.
Was that GORFTHISTLE?
Wonders Owen.
Do you think he sprang one of the traps?
Asks Angarad with concern on her features. The coughing continues.
GORFTHISTLE?
Owen calls out into the darkness.
Are you all right?
Yes.
GORFTHISTLE's voice calls back between bouts of wheezing.
Gas trap, but I'm all right.
The fitful coughing continues for a while before eventually subsiding.
Maybe don't come to this end of the tombs for a bit, though.
Relieved, Angarad and Owen enter the southernmost alcove on the western side of the catacombs. The alcoves on this side are deeper at about 10 feet, but the caskets are similar. Angarad reads the inscription as Butch and his firefly pass by once again back in the hallway.
This one is Brisby the Lovely,
the elf maiden says. Unnerved by the accident that evidently befell GORFTHISTLE, the pair take a moment to prepare themselves before opening the casket. Thankful, when nothing explodes, they peer inside to see a mummified gnome wearing a studded leather tunic and bearing a seashell shield. An onyx-hilted short sword is sheathed in a scabbard at his side.
Wait,
says Angarad, moving in front of Owen and kneeling down.
Do you see that?
See what?
Asks Owen. The medium points at the top of the scabbard, where a slit of blue light can be seen.
The blade of this sword is glowing,
she breathes excitedly, looking up at Owen.
This is an enchanted sword.
Owen bends down, peering closer.
I see it. This is a magical weapon.
Angarad nods.
Yes, it glows the same blue color I see when I cast my detect magic spell.
Owen scratches his chin.
Should we take it?
Angarad shakes her head.
No, not yet anyway. We don't know what kind of enchantment has been placed on it.
Owen nods.
Aye, and as with Prince Welfham, Brisby the Lovely will need his blade for the battle ahead.
Angharad stands and looks at the map.
One more casket. It's in the next alcove to the north.
The pair approach the casket. Angharad smiles lightly upon reading the inscription.
Our last resting gnome is Bofius the Jester.
So,
says Owen,
King Bomfluke's entire court rests with him. It seems such blasphemy to wake them for battle.
Angharad regards the casket thoughtfully, appearing fey in the strange green mist that gently swirls about in the catacombs.
Remember the chanting. They still haunt this place.
And you believe expelling SOOTMURK will give them peace?
Asks Owen.
We can't be sure,
answers the medium.
But, as I understand it, ghosts are restless spirits who can't leave a place because of some gies, curse, or thing undone. It makes sense that freeing the shrine of MULVIS of the curse that is SOOTMURK might free the ghosts that haunt this place.
Owen nods.
I understand. The best we can do is try.
The squire opens the final casket without triggering any traps. Inside, Bofius the Jester rests in a patchwork tunic fringed in gold, wearing a tricorn hat adorned with little golden bells on each corner. He has a thick red mustache, not unlike GORFTHISTLE'S. However, half of it is hanging off his lip.
What happened to his face?
Asks Angharad, gingerly reaching out to touch his mustache.
I don't know,
says Owen.
Perhaps a disease?
The mustache falls off the gnome's face, causing Angharad to jump with a yelp. This, in turn, causes Owen to jump.
Saint Ignatius,
swears the squire, feeling his heart leap into his throat.
It's fake,
he declares, relieved, before bending down, picking up the mustache, and showing it to the elf.
Look, red fox fur.
Both adventurers are caught for a time in the laughter-inducing loop that occurs between being frightened about something and being relieved that there was nothing to have been frightened about.
Right,
says Owen, bringing himself back to business.
Now we meet GORFTHISTLE at King Bomfluke's casket.
Yes,
confirms the elf with a nod.
The sovereign commander of GORFTHISTLE'S, army of the noble dead.
Owen watches Angharad for a moment as she steps out of the alcove.
You know, Angharad, I'm not actually a sir.
Responds the elf absently, apparently having either not heard or not understood.
At the door to the main shaft in the embalming room, after my outburst earlier, you called me Sir Owen. The title Sir is reserved for knights. I am but a squire, not a knight.
It's only a matter of time,
responds Angharad over her shoulder.
How can you be so sure?
Owen asks, following her.
I'm a medium after all,
she says, walking down the corridor toward Bomfluke's casket.
I can foresee such things.
Turn 31. The casket of King Bomfluke stands against the southern wall of a large concave alcove in the south end of the catacombs. The alcove is larger than the others at about 10 feet across at its widest point and 10 feet deep at its apex. The casket itself is the same size as the others, but engraved with a crown in the middle of its door. Standing a few paces back, Angharad and Owen watch as GORFTHISTLE carefully disarms the trap and works the bolt free before slowly opening the door. Inside, a tall, stately, mummified gnome rests upright against the velvet backing of the casket. He wears a crown of green glass and holds a sheathed dagger with a looking-glass pommel in one of his hands. GORFTHISTLE slowly and reverently removes the green glass crown and holds it up for inspection in the light of Angharad's lantern.
Is that the crown you seek?
Asks Owen.
Yes,
replies GORFTHISTLE.
This is the fabled crown of King Bomfluke. It is said to be indestructible and protects its wearer against all types of poison.
A handy artifact for a king,
notes Angharad.
Indeed,
agrees GORFTHISTLE. He looks once again at the mummified corpse.
Though now the good king is beyond the reach of poison, even without the crown.
That's an interesting dagger,
observes Owen, eyeing the glass-pommeled dirk in King Bomfluke's hand.
Do you know anything about it?
GORFTHISTLE carefully returns the crown to King Bomfluke's skull before slowly drawing the dagger from its sheath and showing it to Angharad and Owen. Its narrow blade glows like foxfire in the swirling green mist, and a closer inspection of the looking-glass pommel reveals an eye engraved into it.
This is the Red Seer's dagger,
Gorfthistle says, peering through the glass eye.
If stabbed into a creature, it allows its owner to see what the creature sees.
Curious magic,
says Owen as Gorfthistle hands him the dagger.
I wonder what kind of creature would volunteer to be impaled with a dagger.
A now familiar buzzing sound approaches from the north-south corridor on the eastern side of the catacombs. Angarad, Owen, and Gorfthistle turn to watch the mechanical firefly, with its glowing blue abdomen, approach from the north with Butch close behind. The mechanical dog continues to leap up and down, snapping his jaws at the floating automaton.
You do have to admire his persistence,
says Owen, watching as hunter and quarry alike turn to their right and continue the slow-motion chase along the east-west corridor outside of the alcove.
Light!
Hisses Gorfthistle, pointing north up the north-south corridor from which the automatons emerged. Owen immediately draws his sword and steps forward to block the corridor with shield raised.
Who goes there?
He calls at the glowing firelight, which approaches from the north. Yari steps out of the shadows with such suddenness that Owen nearly beheads him.
"Hail, fellows, and well met,"
says the dwarf cheerfully. Chapter 9. King's Council. Turn 32. Rest turn. The companions gather in front of Bombfluke's open casket and exchange news of their adventures. The small figure of the ancient king seems to somehow preside over the reunion with empty eye sockets. On the dusty floor in front of the casket, Yari draws a rough map from his mental notes of the dungeon's layout. Gorfthistle fills in the remainder of the map with a sketch of the embalming room and the catacombs. Yari points at the part of the map showing the door between the embalming room and the catacombs.
"Is this the keep-out door?"
Yes,
replies Ungarad.
it's the door through which we entered the catacombs.
Yari writes, "Keep out door," on the appropriate part of his map.
That's where we believe Captain Gullion intends to ambush us,
says Tarish.
He was quite insistent that we exit the catacombs through that door.
Owen looks at Elwyn, Yari, and Tarish.
You three passed that door on your way through the catacombs to find us.
Yes,
responds Elwyn.
Was it opened or closed?
Asks Gorfthistle.
It was closed,
answers Tarish.
We left it open when we entered,
says Angarad. Yari nods.
That confirms our suspicions. Likely Gullion reached the door before we did from the embalming room side and closed it so that he could set up his ambush.
Owen looks grave.
We waylaid and bound a sleeping gloop and left him in the embalming room.
Elwyn's eyes widen.
Captain Gullion will have discovered him for sure by now.
Yari looks at Elwyn, then at Tarish.
We'll need to act quickly. The good captain will waste no time reporting to SOOTMURK that some mischief is afoot.
What's our plan then?
Asks Tarish. Gorfthistle gazes at the map on the floor.
I'm prepared to raise the cult of MULVIS. I can march them to the keep-out door. Imagine the old frog's dismay when it's opened not by 3 treasure hunters, but by a dozen undead gnomes.
Tarish laughs gamely before shaking his head.
As much as I'd love to see his face when that happens, we'd run the risk that he or one of his guards would flee through that hallway.
The barbarian indicates the portion of the map showing the corridor between the embalming room and the north-south tunnel between the foundry and SOOTMURK's lair. Yari marks the corridor as North Corridor and the north-south tunnel as Main Shaft on his map.
Aye,
he says with a nod.
They could alert the 4 guards at the tribute checkpoint and then run south down the shaft to alert the 3 robed gloops at the ritual preparation.
He labels these on his map as well.
The whole lot could flee to SOOTMURK and tattle on us before we could stop them.
Elwyn gazes at the map.
The only other exit from the catacombs is the door Captain Gullion tried to lock behind us,
she says, pointing to where the sketch shows the east-west corridor leading from the catacombs to the southern end of the main shaft.
It's the one with the lock that Yari jammed. It's marked with a red X on the other side.
Yari writes Red X Door on the appropriate spot on his map and labels the passage leading to it from the catacombs as South Corridor.
Simple enough,
says Gorfthistle.
Since Yari jammed the lock, I can send them through the red X door instead.
Yari points to the double doors on his map between the ritual preparation and the dragon's lair, which he labels SOOTMURK's puddle.
The 3 robed gloops are stationed here. We'd better take care of them quickly. If they see a pack of gnome mummies pour out of the catacombs, they'll panic and flee right into SOOTMURK's puddle.
Angarad looks thoughtful.
I have my sleep spell. If we can take them by surprise, I may be able to cast it on them before they can get through the doors.
That still leaves Gullion and his guards staged in the embalming room,
says Owen.
Aye,
agrees Torish.
4 guards, plus Gullion, plus the one you tied up. If some pilgrim or guard in the northern end of the main shaft alerts them, we'd run into the same problem.
Yari pulls a short draught from his wineskin and watches as Butch and his firefly make another lap in the glowing green corridor.
The way I see it, the goal is to clear the main shaft of gloops without alerting SOOTMURK so that we can bring the tin golem down and activate it.
Yes,
agrees GORFTHISTLE.
That involves 3 things. Deal with Gullion and his guards, deal with the gloops in the main shaft, and get the automaton of MULVIS down to SOOTMURK's lair.
All at once?
Asks Elwyn. Owen rubs his neck.
It appears so. If we try them linearly, there's a good chance SOOTMURK will be warned before we're ready with the automaton.
Angarad looks at the map again.
Perhaps my sleep spell serves a better purpose on Captain Gullion and his guards.
That seems dangerous,
warns Elwyn, looking empathetically at Angarad.
With 6 armed gloops, don't you risk meeting the same fate that Tarish dealt Morlan back in the jeweller's sanctum?
I can protect her,
says Owen.
I can block the keep-out door and prevent Gullion and his gloops from reaching her.
I understand,
protests Elwyn.
But 6 of them set up for an ambush is a lot to deal with.
Not if Owen stays on this side of the door,
says Torish, looking up from the map. Though still young, he has a bit of hard-won experience with skirmishing tactics as both barbarian and mercenary.
If he uses the doorway as a funnel, only 1, maybe 2 gloops will be able to attack him at the same time. Owen's plate mail and shield will be hard to breach.
Owen nods, looking at Angarad.
How much time do you need to cast your spell?
The medium furrows her brow.
This will be the first time I've cast it in battle, but we saw how fast Morlan was able to cast it.
Owen smiles.
I should be able to hold them off long enough for that.
All right,
says Elwyn, stepping close to Owen.
I can stand behind you, ready with my cure light wounds, should they deal you a blow.
Yari's dark eyes brighten as the beginnings of a plan seem to be forming.
That leaves me, Torish, and GORFTHISTLE to deal with the gloops in the main shaft and fetch the automaton.
Don't forget our undead allies,
GORFTHISTLE reminds the dwarf. Torish shakes his head vigorously.
I want nothing to do with the black luck that will bring. I'll fetch the dolly with the golem on it in the meantime.
Yari nods.
You're the only one strong enough to move it quickly anyway. Once Captain Gullion and his goons are down, you can escape through the keep-out door. From there, you can either take the long way back to the foundry through the old storeroom or follow the north corridor from the embalming room to the main shaft.
If you choose the latter,
warns Owen,
you'd better wait until GORFTHISTLE'S army has attacked. Otherwise you might run into more pilgrims and the guards at the tree boot checkpoint.
GORFTHISTLE points to the map.
While Angarad, Owen, Elwyn, and Torish deal with Gullion and his guards at the keep-out door, King Bomfluke can lead the cult of MULVIS out through the red X door. I can send some north up the shaft to attack the guards at the tree boot checkpoint, and some south to deal with the robed gloops at the rich whale preparation.
Yari nods, glancing at Torish.
Once the cult of MULVIS attacks the tree boot checkpoint, there shouldn't be any gloops paying any attention to you.
Elwyn chuckles, pleased that the others are using her translations of gloop.
All right,
says Angarad.
But if the rich whale preparation is at SOOTMURK's door, what's to stop the 3 robed gloops there from fleeing into SOOTMURK's puddle before GORFTHISTLE'S undead can reach them?
Yari looks at the corpse of Bomfluke, then at GORFTHISTLE.
His Highness does appear to be rather stiff. Will your zombies be able to reach the robed gloops before they can reach SOOTMURK's lair?
I'm unsure,
admits the gnome.
But I have a spell or 2 myself I could use on the gloops at SOOTMURK's door if I can get close enough.
He looks again at Yari's map.
How far is it between the red X door and the rich whale preparation?
Yari scratches his beard.
I'd say about 40 or so feet.
Gorfthistle sighs.
That's too far to cast my spell.
Why not just take him there?
Asks Elwyn. Everyone looks at the cleric.
Take who? Where?
Asks Owen.
Gorfthistle.
Answers Elwyn.
Just take Gorfthistle to the rich whale preparation. If Gullion is in the embalming chamber waiting to ambush us, it shouldn't be a problem. The captain made such a racket about SOOTMURK's treasure hunters. The gloops stationed at SOOTMURK's door should be expecting Yari.
Yari's dark eyes brighten again.
She's right. I should be able to walk right out of the catacombs into the main shaft and right up to the 3 guards. They believe I was sent into the catacombs to find treasure for SOOTMURK.
He looks at Gorfthistle.
I can bring you with me and tell them I found you wandering in the catacombs.
Gorfthistle nods excitedly.
We shouldn't need to keep the ruse up for long. I just need enough time to say the words necessary to cast my spell.
Yari nods as well.
Mutter away. I'll tell them you must have gone mad, wandering in the halls of the dead.
Elwyn gently takes the green crown from Bombfluke's head and hands it to Yari.
Here, take this as well. You can tell them you found some treasure and you're bringing it to SOOTMURK.
Tarish regards Elwyn with a broad grin.
Look at you, priestess. 10 minutes in the presence of Captain Gullion, and you're already learning the fine art of skullduggery.
The cleric blushes.
A falsity to the false-hearted is as the truth to the true-hearted,
She says solemnly, reciting a proverb of law.
Let's put our plan in order,
says Yari, looking around at the group and gesturing to various parts of the map.
Angharad, Elwyn, Owen, and Tarish will stage at the keep-out door. Gorfthistle will awaken the cult of MULVIS. Gorfthistle and I will lead them through the south corridor to the red X door, then head out in front of them to deal with the 3 robed guards.
Right,
says Owen.
Once we, and I can't believe I'm saying this sentence, once we see the zombies march into the south corridor, I'll open the keep-out door to face the 6 frog monsters.
Angharad takes a deep breath.
I will stand back from Owen and prepare to cast my sleep spell.
Tarish nods.
If it works, I'll head out through the keep-out door and make a run for the dolly. If it fails, I'll be there to help with Gullion and his frogs.
Elwyn touches her holy symbol.
And I can help defend Angharad and provide healing if anyone is wounded.
Yari scratches his beard again.
What if SOOTMURK discovers our plan before we finish it?
A heavy silence falls over the group.
Well,
offers Elwyn with a shrug.
She did say that she can't fit into the catacombs.
All right,
says Owen.
If she catches on and attacks, we should try to flee back here, if we can't make it out of the dungeon altogether.
Everyone nods.
Let's hope it doesn't come to that,
says Angharad. In the east-west hallway north of King Bombfluke's alcove, Butch and his firefly continue their eternal, carefree chase. Chapter 10. Gorfthistle's Army of the Noble Dead. Turn 33. The Keep-Out Door. Angharad, Elwyn, Owen, and Tarish exit King Bombfluke's alcove. They turn left into the east-west corridor before taking an immediate right and following the northbound corridor on the western side of the catacombs. Passing 3 alcove tombs and the passage to the red X door on their left, they arrive at the now closed keep-out door. Angharad presses her ear to it, hoping to confirm Captain Gullion and his guards are on the other side in the embalming room.
Anything?
Asks Owen. The elf shakes her head.
Solid stone, just like the other one. I'm not sure what I expected, but it was worth a try.
We'll just have to hope he's there,
says Owen. The young knight positions himself in front of the door and looks at Tarish.
This door swings outward and is very heavy. I might need you to open it when we're ready.
The barbarian nods.
Just be ready to jump back if Captain Gullion is prepared to attack,
Elwyn warns Tarish. Angharad backs down the hallway a few paces.
I will stand here and prepare my spell. I should be able to cast it quickly once the door is open and I can see them.
Elwyn sets down her lantern and moves to stand in front of Angharad, being careful not to block the magic user's view of the door.
I'll shield Angarad in case any monsters get past Owen and Torish,
she says, before glancing behind herself to the south.
I can see the south corridor, so I can alert everyone when King Bombfluke is on the move.
Torish, who is standing to the left of the large stone door, glances at the mummified gnome in the opened iron casket in the alcove behind him.
Is this one of them?
Yes,
says Owen.
That's Bunkle the scribe.
Ah,
says the barbarian.
Of course it is.
He eyes the desiccated corpse suspiciously and nearly leaps out of his skin when it starts to move. Turn 33. Bombfluke's alcove. Gorfthistle removes the scroll from his pocket and slips out of King Bombfluke's alcove. He turns right into the east-west corridor, in the opposite direction of Angarad and the others, before turning immediately left to walk north up the hallway on the eastern side of the catacombs.
Where are you going?
Demands Yari nervously.
I have to be in the right position in the catacombs,
the gnome replies.
The spell has a limited range, like torchlight. I need to be in a position where the magic can reach all the caskets.
I'll wait here,
mutters the dwarf to himself, watching Gorfthistle disappear into the swirling green mist.
Better to be far from such black magic in any event.
Long moments of silence pass, broken only by Butch's occasional barking from somewhere in the distance to the north. Yari wonders if such a ritual as that which Gorfthistle is about to attempt is even possible, and if it is, why it was ever a good idea to have agreed to participate in it. He tries his best to peer up the northbound corridor after Gorfthistle without leaving the alcove. There is no enchanted glowing or magical flash, no change in the swirling of the strange green fog, and no eldritch chanting from the darkness. As Yari silently chastises himself for having believed in such a childish notion as raising the dead to employ as soldiers, he hears behind him what sounds like someone sitting down in an old wicker chair. Spinning around, the thief watches in horror as the mummified corpse of King Bombfluke uncrosses its arms and steps out of its casket. Yari instinctively backs out of the alcove as the undead gnome slowly walks toward him on creaking legs made stiff by ages of death. The contorted expression on the monster's face does not change, nor does life burn in the empty sockets that were once its eyes. A terrifying thought seizes Yari. Looking down, he realizes that he is still holding the king's crown. Fumbling, the dwarf holds it up in front of the monster like a child caught with a stolen cookie.
Ha! Here!
He stammers, awkwardly placing the crown back on Bombfluke's head.
Someone gave it to me! Here! There! That looks nice. It makes you look very kingly.
But the walking corpse of King Bombfluke doesn't seem to notice the footpad, nor does it react when Yari puts its crown back on its head. It steps out of the alcove, turns left, and shambles west down the corridor before turning north to follow the same passage Angarad and the others followed. Yari leaps back into Bombfluke's now empty alcove just as another corpse enters the hallway. It shuffles in from the direction Gorfthistle went and shuffles out in the direction King Bombfluke went. This one has a dour scowl on its face and clutches a handful of copper coins in each of its bony hands. It's followed by another walking corpse, bedecked in gold-embroidered priestly garments. A third corpse follows after, wearing an elaborate floral print dress and carrying a flute made of red oak. A fourth walking corpse follows this one, clad in strange armor that looks like seashells and carrying an ivory-tipped spear in one hand. Yari watches the procession of the marching dead in abject terror, slinking back into the shadows as far as he can until he is practically inside King Bombfluke's casket. Finally, Gorfthistle appears, following his parade of undead gnomes. He doesn't seem to notice Yari, so well hidden is the thief, and so focused is he on controlling the animated cadavers in front of him. Yari elects not to interrupt and decides instead to take a moment to collect himself. When the procession passes by, the thief slowly slinks out of the alcove to watch Gorfthistle turn right and follow the cult of MULVIS north up the hallway on the western side of the catacombs. The dwarf leans against the wall, trying to calm his heart. before sliding his back down the old stone to sit for a time. He reaches for his wineskin. Finding it empty, he sighs and contemplates whether to simply sneak out of this cursed dungeon and leave all of this madness behind him. His ruminations are interrupted when the mechanical firefly once again floats past in front of him, Butch close behind. Yari decides there is something soothing about watching the rhythmic, carefree chase. Standing, he decides to follow the pair. However, Butch suddenly breaks off the hunt, rushes past Yari, and begins pawing tenaciously at the base of King Bombfluke's now empty casket.
"Hello, Butch,"
says the dwarf.
"What's got your attention off your quarry, eh?"
The footpad's keen ears immediately recognize a hollow sound when the metallic terrier's brass paws strike the velvet-lined backing of the casket. Kneeling down, Yari knocks on its back wall and hears the same hollow sound.
"It's wooden," he realizes. "The casket has a wooden rear panel."
Running dexterous fingers around the edges of the lining, he removes the back wall of the coffin in the same way one would remove its lid. A 5-foot-tall, roughly circular tunnel lays beyond. Peering into it, the dwarf can see that the green mist which pervades the rest of the catacombs is absent. The passage looks to run south for about 20 or so feet before turning to the west. Yari pats Butch on the head.
"Butch is an expert finder of secret doors," he declares, repeating GORFTHISTLE'S boast. "Let's see where it leads, shall we?"
The dwarf follows Butch into the tunnel with crossbow raised, moving as quietly as possible, until reaching the westbound turn. The passage appears to dead end at a stone wall about 10 feet away. Butch is likewise scratching at this wall. Yari hears no hollow sound. Approaching cautiously, the dwarf searches for any clue that it might open. He feels a warm draft coming from a small crack near the upper corner of the wall. Reaching his fingers inside, he feels a metallic bar with a ring on top. So unnerved by what he witnessed in Bombfluke's alcove, Yari nearly pulls the ring in an instinctive attempt to get as far from the catacombs as possible.
"Wait," he says, looking down at the agitated automaton. "Let's not open this door just yet, Butch. Stay. Rather, come. Follow me."
The dwarf hustles back up the tunnel, exiting through Bombfluke's casket, and arrives back in the alcove. Looking down at the map he scrawled into the dust on the floor, he's dismayed to find it partially destroyed from the traffic caused by himself, King Bombfluke, and Butch. Still, he's able to draw a line from the part of the map that represented the southern end of the catacombs and add the secret tunnel to it. Trying to keep scaling as best he can, he traces a line to represent south for 20 feet and west for 10 feet. Dark eyes wide, he then looks up from the map and stares back down the secret passage before announcing his realization to Butch.
"That tunnel leads to SOOTMURK's lair."
Chapter 11. War. Turn 34. While the others prepare to face Captain Gullion, Elwyn watches King Bombfluke's procession of undead soldiers march toward her from the southern end of the hallway. The cleric counts 10 zombies, followed by GORFTHISTLE. She doesn't see Yari. She considers calling out to GORFTHISTLE, but he seems to be deep in concentration. The macabre parade turns to its left, marching toward the red X door and out of Elwyn's field of view.
"It looks like GORFTHISTLE is taking the zombies out to the main shaft,"
Elwyn whispers to her companions.
"But I don't see Yari."
"Where is he?"
An agitated Torish whispers back.
"I don't know,"
replies Elwyn, concerned.
I thought the plan was for Yari and GORFTHISTLE to go out ahead of the zombies and deal with the gloops at SOOTMURK's door,
hisses Owen.
"I thought so as well,"
replies Elwyn.
"What should we do?"
The young adept glances at Angarad for potential guidance, but the medium's eyes are closed as she silently rehearses the steps necessary to cast sleep. Owen looks at his companions and then again at the door.
"Let's open it. Our timing is critical. We can't let Gullion discover the zombies before we attack. He could warn SOOTMURK."
Torish nods.
"All right,"
he says, putting his shoulder to the door.
"Ready?"
Owen raises his shield and drops into a defensive stance.
"I am."
Angarad opens her eyes for a moment.
I believe I am ready.
There is an uncharacteristic hint of nervousness in her voice.
You can do this,
encourages Elwyn, placing a gentle hand on the magic user's slender arm. Ungarad nods. Tarish drives his shoulder into the heavy stone door. Muscles rippling under the strain, the barbarian shoves open the ancient portal and deftly leaps back to the left. Sure enough, Captain Gullion stands on the other side of the threshold with his 4 guards and the now freed soldier waylaid by Gorfthistle and bound by Owen. All 6 gloops are ready for battle. Gullion's curved sword is drawn and the spears of his 4 guards are leveled at the adventurers.
"We've been expecting you,"
croaks the captain. Raising his curved sword, he roars, "Kill the treacherous dogs! Kill them all!" Combat. Round 1. The 2 gloops nearest the door stab at Owen with their spears, though the squire's position just on the other side of the threshold prevents the other gloops from joining in. The 2 spear points ring against his shield as Owen successfully blocks both attacks. Ungarad completes her spell much faster than she thought herself capable. In a few short seconds, all 6 gloops drop their weapons and collapse, snoring, onto the floor of the embalming room. There is a moment of awed silence before Elwyn cheers and throws her arms around the elf maiden.
I knew you could do it.
Aye,
says Owen, blinking.
That was quite fast, Angharad.
Well done, sorceress,
cheers Torish.
You must have studied Morland's book quite a bit.
Angarad is slightly dizzy, both elated by the success of her spell and exhilarated by the casting of it.
Thank you,
she murmurs with the same not altogether present voice of someone just roused from a dream. Horrific croaking echoes from the south corridor leading to the Red X door, as Gorfthistle and the cult of MULVIS have evidently reached the main shaft and are attacking the gloops.
I'd better go get the golem,
declares Torish, stripping off his scale mail hauberk to go bare-chested. This causes Angarad and Elwyn to blush, look away, steal a quick glance, and look away again.
I'll need to move fast,
the barbarian adds with a wink. He lights his torch, steps into the embalming chamber, and leaps over the unconscious bodies of Gullion and the gloops.
Good speed, Tarish,
calls out Angarad, surprised at the concern in her own voice, but Torish moves so quickly as to perhaps not have heard. Turning left inside the chamber, he sprints westward down the north corridor and out of sight.
Ho there!
Calls a familiar voice behind Angarad, Elwyn, and Owen. They turn to see Yari and Butch running north from the darkness. The pair stop at the junction of the south corridor.
Gorfthistle's launched his attack without me,
shouts Yari.
We know,
Elwyn calls back.
We've dealt with Gullion, and Torish is off for the automaton of Mulvis.
Yari peers down the hall to the Red X door, from which the terrified croaks echo.
I'm going to see what's going on out there.
Wait,
shouts Angarad, trotting down the hallway and joining the dwarf.
I'm coming with you.
Owen turns to Elwyn.
Do you still have your rope? The one we used to haul Oric out of the water?
Yes,
replies the cleric.
Let's tie up Captain Gullion and the rest before they wake up.
Torish reaches the iron door at the end of the westbound passage from the embalming room. The frantic croaking of gloops can be heard from the other side. Torish carefully opens the door and sees several terrified gloop pilgrims and the guards of the tribute checkpoint attempting to flee north toward the foundry. Behind them, the shambling corpses of King Bombfluke and 3 or 4 gnome zombies give chase. The panic reaches a bottleneck at the 4 crates stacked at the tribute checkpoint. Torish sees a zombie in a studded leather tunic, bearing a seashell shield, shove a glowing blue short sword into the back of one of the gloop guards. The barbarian slips out of the door and falls in with the fleeing gloops north of the checkpoint. None of them seem to notice him, so terrified are they of the monsters chasing them from beyond the grave. Torish sprints north out of the shaft and into the foundry. Angarad and Yari trot west down the passage from the catacombs to the now opened Red X door with Butch in tow. On the way, the footpad tells the medium about the secret passage Butch found behind Bombfluke's casket. Chaos abounds in the main shaft, and the screeching and croaking of terrified gloops is deafening. Peering out to the north, the elf and dwarf see Bombfluke and a handful of zombies attacking fleeing pilgrims and guards.
Hey, that's Brisby the Lovely,
cheers Angarad.
What?
Asks a bewildered Yari. Angarad points at a zombie wearing a studded leather tunic and bearing a seashell shield as it repeatedly stabs a glowing blue short sword into the back of a hapless gloop guard. To the south, a half-dozen gloop pilgrims bang frantically on the massive double doors to SOOTMURK's lair as the animated corpses of Prince Welfam, Bilyur the Tight-Fisted, and several other gnomes maul whatever gloop is nearest to them. In the middle of the anarchy, a robed gloop, wielding a curved dagger, slashes wildly at 3 identical blonde gnomes who look exactly like Gorfthistle and move in perfect unison. There's a dizzying flash of multicolored lights, like an exploding rainbow, which nearly blinds Angarad and Yari. The robed gloop croaks out and falls back, covering its eyes, only to have the corpse of Marcus Twigbender beaten about the head with a birchwood wand. Rubbing his eyes, Yari points at the 3 blonde gnomes.
Is that,
he stutters,
rather, are they Gorfthistle?
Angarad nods vigorously.
Yes, he's cast a spell on himself that makes it appear like there are many of him. It's illusion magic, as was that flash of light.
When the gloops escaping through the tribute checkpoint reach the foundry, they begin hopping in great leaps for the large exhaust shaft at the northern end of its western wall. Tarish arrives at the automaton of MULVIS. Wasting no time, the barbarian grabs the dolly with both hands and, with a grunt, begins rolling it back toward the main shaft. Escaping gloop pilgrims, already fleeing the walking dead, croak in horror at the sight of the 6-armed snake-headed monster charging toward them. Tarish reaches the main shaft and begins wheeling the automaton toward the tribute checkpoint. King Bombfluke stands over a shrieking gloop guard, mechanically stabbing the poor creature to death with a slender, glass-pommeled dagger. Several other zombies continue to shamble northward, chasing those gloops lucky enough to have made it through the logjam of the tribute checkpoint. At the ritual preparation, utter anarchy reigns. Zombies tear into gloops with dispassionate ferocity, while gloops bang frantically on the double doors, beseeching the mighty SOOTMURK to save them from the cursed wights.
Gorfthistle!
Cries out Yari from the red X door, hoping the gnome can hear him above the din. Gorfthistle turns around.
Yari!
He cheers.
Come here, damn it!
Screams the dwarf. The gnome trots north from the grisly scene unfolding behind him, both of his mirror images fading as he does so.
Why did you start this bedlam without me?
Demands a frustrated Yari.
Those gloops are alerting the bloody dragon!
Gorfthistle's mustaches quiver in a curious combination of bewilderment and exhilaration. It occurs to Angarad that the gnome has been waiting a long time for this moment of retribution against the gloops.
I know,
he admits sheepishly.
I'm sorry I got carried away. I've never controlled an army of the dead before.
Just then, to the horror of all 3 adventurers, one of the double doors opens, allowing the remaining gloops at the southern end of the main shaft to pour through into the safety of SOOTMURK's lair. Tarish and the automaton of MULVIS arrive at the tribute checkpoint to find it jammed with fleeing gloops, the attacking zombies, the standing crates, and sundry baskets of offerings dropped by panicking pilgrims. The warrior glances at the still open iron door to the north corridor, leading back to the embalming room. He contemplates wheeling the dolly through it, but decides it would take too long to then have to wheel the dolly into the catacombs and back out the south corridor to the main shaft. Angarad, Yari, and Gorfthistle watch as the great double doors to SOOTMURK's puddle close with a reverberating boom.
This could complicate things,
notes Gorfthistle.
Hydroon's tits,
curses Yari.
That bloody dragon will come out now for sure.
The secret passage you told me about,
exclaims Angarad.
Yari, we can lead the cult of MULVIS there and loose them into SOOTMURK's puddle from the side.
The dwarf looks at Angarad as though he'd forgotten she was there.
Right,
he says at last. Gorfthistle looks intrigued.
What secret passage?
Yari quickly describes the tunnel Butch discovered between Bombfluke's casket and what he believes is the eastern side of SOOTMURK's puddle.
Recall your undead soldiers, GORFTHISTLE,
commands Angarad.
We don't have much time.
As Tarish struggles to shove the automaton of MULVIS through the tribute checkpoint, GORFTHISTLE's uniquely strong voice echoes from the southern end of the main shaft. King Bombfluke and all zombies at the checkpoint suddenly cease their assault, turn around, and begin shuffling south as the remaining gloops continue their terrified exodus to the north.
Rosmerta,
swears Tarish gratefully as the path clears. He repositions himself behind the dolly and does his best to roll the cumbersome object through the scattered baskets and crates littering the floor. At the red X door, Angarad peers north into the darkness. The stovepipe-like tunnel is markedly quieter now, and she can just begin to make out the shapes of the shambling zombies march southward in response to GORFTHISTLE's recall.
I don't see Tarish. We can't leave him to wander right into SOOTMURK.
I'll wait for him,
volunteers GORFTHISTLE, as the zombies at the ritual preparation slowly march north toward their commander.
I have the lightning bolts that activate the automaton of MULVIS, and it needs to be a gnome to use them safely.
Angarad is uncharacteristically irresolute. She continues to stare to the north and doesn't respond.
If we're to have the mummies attack through the secret tunnel,
says Yari to GORFTHISTLE,
won't we need you with us to command them?
As the outline of King Bombfluke ambles into view, GORFTHISTLE calls out in Gnomish,
King Bombfluke, lead your mighty cult of MULVIS wherever this elf maiden goes. Allow no harm to come to her or this dwarf. Destroy every gloop you see, but attack no others.
He turns back to Yari and Angarad.
That ought to do it.
Yari watches the mummified Bombfluke stop and slowly nod. Curiously, the footpad finds something yet regal about the ancient king, Sartorius in his fabled crown and noble attire. The other members of the cult likewise stop and stand still, apparently waiting for Angarad to move.
All right,
the magic user says at last. She follows Yari as he hustles eastward down the south corridor to the catacombs. Angarad is followed by King Bombfluke and his cult of MULVIS. Butch remains with GORFTHISTLE. With the main shaft now empty, Tarish is able to build up some momentum with the dolly. He arrives at the red X door to find GORFTHISTLE waving him on toward the ritual preparation. The corpses of several gloops lay scattered about to the south.
We have to hurry,
the gnome pants, falling in beside the barbarian and trotting alongside the dolly as Tarish rolls it southward.
The bloody gloops escaped into SOOTMURK's lair and she's bound to come out and investigate.
Where are the others?
Asks the warrior between heavy breaths that seem unnaturally loud in the now silent main shaft.
Angarad and Yari are off to a secret passage they believe will buy us some time,
answers the gnome.
I haven't seen the knight or the cleric.
The knight and the cleric, as it were, are busy binding Captain Gullion and his guards when Elwyn hears shuffling from within the catacombs.
Do you hear that?
She asks, creeping over to the keep-out door and peering uselessly into the swirling green mist.
It sounds like marching.
Owen removes his helmet and joins Elwyn.
I hear it. I can't see anything through that fog, though.
It's the same sound as when the zombies marched out with GORFTHISTLE,
notes the cleric.
Could they be returning to the catacombs?
Owen looks down the north corridor to the now opened iron door through which Tarish went to fetch the automaton of MULVIS. He remembers the fear he felt at that door when he believed Elwyn was in danger on the other side of it. He then remembers Angarad reminding him to play his part.
Let's finish tying up these gloops. There's little to be accomplished by re-entering the catacombs.
As Angarad, Yari, and the cult of MULVIS arrive at Bombfluke's casket, Tarish, GORFTHISTLE, and Butch arrive at the ritual preparation. The silence is as unnerving as the proverbial calm before the storm. GORFTHISTLE unshoulders his pack and removes one of the 3 brass lightning bolts while Tarish places the automaton in front of the doors. Positioning himself behind the construct, the gnome finds the indentation in its back and looks at Tarish.
You might want to back up for this. This thing will attack every living creature that isn't a gnome.
Tarish unshoulders his hide shield, takes a few paces back, and grins.
If the dragon comes through that door, it won't matter.
The gnome regards the barbarian for a brief moment and smiles.
I admire your reasoning. All right. Ready?
Tarish nods. Gorfthistle inserts the brass lightning bolt into the indentation. A metallic clicking echoes from within the construct before it begins to vibrate. Several puffs of smoke exhaust from various small vents. The main shaft becomes an amphitheater of ringing and huffing, like the inside of a steam works, as the automaton of MULVIS comes to life. The snakehead begins to turn like the hand of a clock, and all 6 arms begin to spin all 6 short swords. Man and gnome are awestruck by the spectacle for a time. Tarish has never even imagining something like what he is witnessing. It is Gorfthistle, not totally unaccustomed to such bizarre technology, who regains his senses first. Slowly backing away, the gnome reaches out and grabs Tarish by the wrist.
We had better go!
The pair turn and start to run back up the main shaft before they hear a cuckoo clock sound. Turning around, they see Butch jumping up and down, barking at the automaton of MULVIS as a tiny farm dog might bark at a trespassing grizzly bear. Halfway between SOOTMURK's lair and the red X door, Gorfthistle calls out over the industrial racket of the activating automaton.
Butch! Come! Butch!
Butch ignores him and stands firmly rooted, growling and barking as ferociously as he can at the automaton of MULVIS. When both double doors to SOOTMURK's lair open and the black dragon's primordial head emerges, however, Butch is persuaded. Barbarian, gnome, and mechanical dog sprint for the safety of the red X door. Chapter 12. A Clash of Titans. Turn 35. SOOTMURK's massive head slithers down to behold the automaton of MULVIS with crocodilian eyes.
I know you. You're one of Bombfluke's foul little gnome toys.
Gorfthistle, Tarish, and Butch reach the threshold of the red X door, leap into the south corridor, and peer back out into the main shaft to watch the encounter. Tarish is struck at how small the brass golem looks in front of the grease dragon. At about 5 to 6 feet tall, all of it could fit inside SOOTMURK's mouth. But when the 6 whirring blades slash the worm's snout, SOOTMURK rears back, shocked. Above the locomotive din of the attacking automaton, there is the sound of air being sucked in. Tarish has never heard anything quite like it, but it feels to him like a summer gale put somehow in reverse.
Get back!
Orders Gorfthistle, pulling hard on Tarish's belt.
Her breath!
Tarish reaches down and grabs Butch just as Gorfthistle yanks him back. A 10-foot wide geyser of boiling grease erupts up the tunnel as the legendary grease dragon unleashes her fabled breath weapon. Impossibly hot, it forces Gorfthistle and Tarish to turn and cover their faces, even though they are tucked away in the south corridor out of its path. The sizzling sound is stomach-churning as the boiling grease flash-fries the corpses of the gloops laying in the main shaft. Tarish and Gorfthistle wait for it to pass before carefully peering around the corner. The automaton is covered in steaming grease, but appears completely unaffected. Frustrated, SOOTMURK hisses furiously and strikes out at the construct like a cobra at a mongoose. Concluding their work in the embalming room, Elwyn and Owen hear the din of the battle. Elwyn retrieves Tarish's hauberk, and, by the light of her lantern, leads Owen west down the north corridor to the now-destroyed tribute checkpoint. There is intense oily heat radiating from the darkness to the south. The main shaft echoes with the roars of the dragon and the steam engine gyrations of the automaton. Elwyn and Owen can make out the glow of torchlight down the shaft on the left-hand side.
That's the red X door,
Elwyn says, pointing at the torchlight. Adept and Squire hustle south toward the din. The walls of the main shaft effuse the heat of SOOTMURK's breath attack, and the pair have to hold their shields above their heads to protect themselves from the boiling grease that drips from the ceiling. Angarad follows Yari into the small tunnel behind Bombfluke's casket, with the cult of MULVIS following Angarad like emaciated cows behind a hay wagon. The cramped conditions in the tunnel and the smell of the dead compel both thief and magic user to cover their noses. The sounds of battle are so loud that they can be heard through the crack in the stone where the passage dead ends.
"We're too late,"
says Yari, holding his ear up to the little crack in the wall.
"SOOTMURK's already gone out. It sounds like she's attacking something."
Still covering her nose, Angarad furrows her brow.
If we unleash the cult, it could provide a distraction.
Yari manages a dry smile.
"It might help with the smell in here anyway."
Angarad can't help but laugh.
All right then, shall we?
Yari nods. Reaching his hand into the crack, he finds the iron ring and pulls. The stone wall swings outward like the door to a bank vault, revealing SOOTMURK's grotto. Across the black pond of muck, the dragon is locked in battle with the automaton of MULVIS at the now open double doors. Roughly a score of gloops, a mix of attendants, guards, and pilgrims, stand scattered about, cheering on their dark queen. Angarad and Yari, too, are transfixed by the battle between the dragon and the automaton. They stand there, awestruck, until both are shoved forward into the lair from behind. Seeing the gloops and heeding GORFTHISTLE'S command to destroy every gloop you see, the cult of MULVIS pours into the grotto to attack. They make straight for the gloops, but immediately begin slipping and falling in the greasy quagmire of SOOTMURK's puddle. Elwyn and Owen join Torish, GORFTHISTLE, and Butch at the junction of the Red X door. Elwyn returns the barbarian's scale mail hauberk. All four adventurers crowd in the little passage as tightly as possible and watch the titans clash at the door to the dragon's lair. The battle is a blur of metal and claw. SOOTMURK is horribly bloodied. She thrashes about like a snake in a snare. The automaton is dented and missing at least one arm. Steam whistles out of it like tea kettles on a bonfire. Soon there is too much smoke to see anything. The sounds, however, are ear-splitting. SOOTMURK's roars of pain, the scrape of claw against brass, the whirring of swords, and the gas yard exhaust of steam deafen the adventurers. Then there is an explosion of some kind. A crackle of electrical energy buzzes up the shaft like ball lightning rolling across a herd of longhorn cattle. There is a puff and a metallic shudder. The companions huddle together in terror inside the Red X door. Owen embraces Elwyn, GORFTHISTLE embraces Torish, and Torish embraces Butch. When the storm passes, all four adventurers look at each other before slowly peeking out around the threshold in a totem pole of dreadful curiosity. When the smoke finally clears, the head of SOOTMURK hovers defiantly over her vanquished enemy. She is slashed to ribbons, and blood oozes from her like sap from a spring maple. But she is there, alive. The automaton of MULVIS is a shuddering pile of brass and bronze scattered about the obliterated ritual preparation like scrap metal in a junkyard. Behind SOOTMURK, a score of gloops drop to their knees and bow to their bellies before their black goddess. SOOTMURK places the foremost of her clawed limbs on the decapitated serpent head of the automaton and seems to affix the four adventurers with one primordial eye before roaring her triumph so loud that even the stone Red X door shudders. All four adventurers leap back into the south corridor and cover their ears. When the roar subsides, it's answered with the awful cheer of a score of adoring gloops. In that moment, Elwyn can't decide which sound is worse.
"Now, I'm no machinist,"
says Torish finally.
"but I don't think the automaton is supposed to look like that."
GORFTHISTLE rubs the back of his neck.
She's severely wounded, though.
Do you think she saw us?
Asks Elwyn. There is a long silence in the hallway.
I'm not sure,
says Owen.
But GORFTHISTLE is right. She's badly wounded. I think she's missing an eye.
Let's retreat down the hallway to the catacombs,
suggests Elwyn.
She can't fit in here.
GORFTHISTLE nods.
Aye, and if we stay here, she might come up the shaft and breathe on us.
Elwyn notices Torish and Owen share a glance.
Cosmic mystery. You two want to go after her.
Torish dons his chainmail hauberk.
It's now or not at all.
Owen draws his sword.
He's right. I swore that I'd stop this monster. This is my only chance.
A wounded dragon,
counsels Elwyn.
is still a dragon.
Gorfthistle scratches an uncharacteristically demure butch on his head.
That is true, but her breath attack may be weakened by her condition.
Owen's hazel eyes brighten.
I've heard that before. In legends, anyway. You've seemed well-versed so far. Can you be sure?
Well,
says Gorfthistle.
No.
But the gnome's eyes then brighten as well. Ruffling through his pack, he retrieves the remaining pair of brass lightning bolts and begins trying to jam one of them into the trumpet end of the strange device he's been carrying. Torish watches with interest.
What is that contraption anyway? Is it a magic wand? It looks like the bastard son of a crossbow and a war horn.
It's called a blunderbuss,
responds Gorfthistle, as he slowly works the brass lightning bolt farther into its flared mouth with one hand and points to various parts of the device with his other hand.
It's not magic. You can jam a bunch of nails, copper coins, and other shrapnel into this end and put an explosive powder into this end. When you pull the trigger, the explosion shoots the shrapnel out of this end.
A bewildered Elwyn points at the brass lightning bolt.
And you mean to try and shoot SOOTMURK with that? Like a crossbow bolt?
If these bolts can be hurled at the forge,
says Gorfthistle without looking up,
I don't see why they can't be hurled at the dragon. Given the mural in the foundry, and their ability to power the automaton of MULVIS, there's clearly quite a bit of energy in these. What else explains the explosion when SOOTMURK destroyed the automaton?
Once the lightning bolt is jammed into the blunderbuss as far as it can go, the gnome looks up.
In the worst-case scenario, I'll give the dragon a good laugh when I try to shoot a brass widget at her, and it just falls awkwardly to the floor. Well, before she devours me anyway.
This grisly speculation elicits an involuntary giggle from Elwyn, which immediately rebounds to Gorfthistle. Apparently contagious, it spreads to Owen and Torish before quickly subsiding.
I'll go as well,
says Elwyn, donning her shield.
Please no,
protests Owen.
If she does breathe at us, it could kill us all at once.
He's right,
reasons Gorfthistle.
If you stay here, you may be able to use your healing magic to help us if need be.
Elwyn furrows her brow. Her companions are, of course, correct. Hers is to heal, not to harm. She cannot heal if she's dead. The adept tousles her dark hair and nods.
Butch,
commands Gorfthistle.
Stay.
Torish and Owen ready their weapons and cautiously enter the main shaft with shields raised, followed by Gorfthistle. SOOTMURK's newt-like head, bleeding from innumerable wounds and missing an eye, yet broods over her conquered foe.
I've detested the demon MULVIS for decades,
she boasts at the approaching trio between ragged breaths.
And now I've slain the last of his foul brass effigies.
Owen's lips, dry with fear, separate audibly when he speaks.
That may be, but you've also slain many mortals without right to do so.
In most circumstances, the mere questioning of a dragon's right to slay mortals as she pleases would spell instant death for any mortal so foolish as to have questioned it. But these are not most circumstances. SOOTMURK is terribly wounded, and she knows it. More to the point, she knows that the mortals know it. She sighs and fixes her one remaining eye on Owen for a time.
Who are you? A fledgling knight? Have you come to slay me after your murderous little tin soldier has worn me down for you? Would you claim honor in slaying an already mortally wounded foe?
Elwyn approaches the threshold to the main shaft to watch the exchange. Gorfthistle does his best to remain concealed by the much taller humans in front of him. Owen swallows hard.
No,
he admits.
I could not claim honor in it, but you must surrender to Duke Ganelon and answer for your crimes against his subjects.
Elwyn looks again at SOOTMURK, surprised that she doesn't immediately balk at the suggestion. The injured dragon lowers her head to rest on the still steaming pile of brass that was the automaton of MULVIS.
I know Duke Ganelon. I knew his grandfather's grandfather, a just and merciful line, if I recall.
She then lays down on her belly and watches Owen like an old house cat might watch someone pour her a bowl of cream.
Come, brave knight,
she purrs.
Look upon your wounded quarry with the mercy for which your lords are well known.
Have a care, Owen,
warns Gorfthistle from behind Torish.
She could be using magic.
Combat. Surprise round. SOOTMURK wins. Surprise. For a moment, Owen is overcome with a tremendous amount of pity for SOOTMURK. In this moment, he feels strangely compelled to protect her, even if from himself. After all, as SOOTMURK pointed out, there is no honor to be claimed in besting an already wounded foe. And wounded or not, she is an ancient creature. But the heart of a knight is not easily corrupted, and Gorfthistle's warning is sufficient to give Owen pause. He recalls the way that Angarad captivated him in the North Corridor for a brief instant. Both circumstances felt, after a fashion, magical, but this feels different, perhaps less enchanting and more, somehow, sorcerous. The strange moment is interrupted by the now familiar croaking of terrified gloops. They seem to bubble out of the darkness behind SOOTMURK.
Cursed wights!
The adventurers hear them scream.
Cursed wights!
Combat, round 1. Abandoning her attempts to charm Owen, SOOTMURK turns to see the animated corpses of the cult of MULVIS stumbling and wading through her precious pool of muck. They appear to be trying to reach the score of terrified gloops now rushing to cower behind her. Her remaining yellow eye alights on Bombfluke.
I know that crown. That is the crown of Bombfluke. That is my weregild for conquering this shrine more than a decade ago. It is mine by right.
SOOTMURK strikes out in a flurry. She beheads the nearest zombie, Maclarod the Hound-Faced. With one claw, she cuts the next zombie, Bophius the Jester, in half with another claw. Anghard watches ruefully as his two halves fall to the floor of the grotto, like his red fox fur mustache fell to the floor of the catacombs. The elf quickly backs farther into the safety of the secret tunnel in case SOOTMURK should spot her. Then, like a black snake on a cricket, SOOTMURK swallows King Bombfluke in 2 gulps, fabled crown and all. With the dragon's back turned, Gorfthistle steps out from behind Torish and fires his blunderbuss. There is an explosion of black smoke from its flared muzzle and a deafening bang that reverberates off the grotto walls. The brass lightning bolt transforms into a crackling thunderstroke that strikes SOOTMURK in the back. The great beast emits an ear-splitting shriek and thrashes about in tortured pain. The horrible noise and terrifying display cause the gloop pilgrims to hurl themselves to the floor and cover their ears. However, SOOTMURK's attendants recover quickly. Seeing their queen attacked in this way enrages them, and they begin to hop about to retrieve their weapons. Fortunately, Yari notes with a touch of irony, their weapons are the spears that have been converted to grease mops with which they massage SOOTMURK. Yari, too, backs farther into the secret passage with Angarad, readying his crossbow in case any remaining gloops spot him and decide to attack. He finds Angarad rifling through her pack.
What are you looking for?
He asks the magic user without taking his eye off the battle erupting in SOOTMURK's lair.
This,
declares Angarad triumphantly, pulling a scroll out from her pack.
What is it?
Asks Yari.
It's the scroll we found in the purple cloak in Draxus's alchemical lab. It's fire magic. It's too advanced for me to memorize, but I can recite the words from the scroll and may be able to cast it.
With several of the gloops now taking up arms, if spears converted to grease mops can be called that, Owen and Torish drop into their respective combat stances and hope that SOOTMURK is too exhausted to attack. Torish prepares to hurl one of his javelins at any gloop who approaches him, but does not advance for now. Elwyn can no longer see everything from the Red X door and decides to run out and join her companions. The remaining zombies ignore SOOTMURK, still obeying Gorfthistle's command to destroy every gloop you see but attack no others. One of SOOTMURK's attendants hops too close to Princess Oxtwig, who promptly begins drubbing it mercilessly with her red oak flute. Combat. Round 2. Angharad begins reading the arcane scripture from her scroll, focusing her mind on the horde of gloops now gathering to attack her companions in the main shaft on the other side of the grotto. She is interrupted, however, when SOOTMURK roars,
"Enough!"
The dragon collapses into her puddle of muck, the static electricity from GORFTHISTLE'S lightning bolt still rippling over her bloody body.
"I'm too wounded. I yield. Call off your undead henchmen."
GORFTHISTLE looks at the dragon defiantly.
Call off your bloody gloops first.
"Stand down,"
orders SOOTMURK. She lays back in her pool, black flanks heaving in long, ragged breaths.
"Stand down."
Puzzled, but also terrified, the remaining gloop attendants stop where they land. GORFTHISTLE glances at Elwyn, who nods.
Cult of MULVIS!
Shouts the gnome, albeit hesitantly.
Cease your attack!
All 7 remaining zombies immediately stop moving and stand as still in SOOTMURK's puddle as withered trees in swamp water. SOOTMURK rolls onto her back under the ceiling of the grotto and stares upward as though gazing at the sky.
"State your terms,"
she demands in resigned tones. Angharad and Yari remain in the relative safety of their position at the back of the secret tunnel. The gloop pilgrims remain cowering on the floor. The gloop attendants stay where they are, black eyes blinking. Elwyn, Owen, Tarish, GORFTHISTLE, and Butch carefully gather at the threshold to SOOTMURK's lair. It is Owen who finally speaks.
"You must surrender and agree to return with me to Duke Ganelon."
SOOTMURK sighs.
"Go on."
"Captain Gullion and his bodyguards shall also be my prisoners."
Owen continues.
"And my subjects?"
asks the dragon.
"Does the Duke intend to hang them for the crime of merely admiring me?"
Owen looks at Elwyn, Tarish, and GORFTHISTLE.
"Those who have not taken up arms against Duke Ganelon's people can go free, but they must vacate the KELFREK marsh and return to wherever their tribe calls home."
"And they must swear to never return to this shrine,"
adds GORFTHISTLE. Long moments pass in the grotto as all present await SOOTMURK's response.
"Very well,"
she says at last.
"I accept your terms."
Epilogue. It takes the adventurers several hours of planning and several days of labor to manage the logistics of their victory at the shrine of the Oozing Serpent. First and most urgent is the matter of transporting SOOTMURK from the shrine to Duke Ganelon before she has a chance to recover her strength. After lengthy discussion and many reassurances by GORFTHISTLE that the statue of MULVIS in the profane chapel is, in fact, just a statue, the party decides to use the chains from its 6 wrists to bind the dragon. With Owen and Tarish standing guard, Yari and GORFTHISTLE employ tools from the foundry to remove the chains from the statue and bolt them about the foremost 6 of SOOTMURK's 12 clawed limbs. Owen then leads her out of the shrine through the exhaust shaft in the northern end of the dungeon. This requires the soot in the exhaust shaft to first be set ablaze to clear out an infestation of large, soot-eating slugs that have taken up residence therein. Once out of the shrine, Owen and SOOTMURK depart through the KELFREK marsh with Tarish as a guide. Next is the matter of freeing MULVIS, which turns out to be fairly straightforward. GORFTHISTLE simply hurls the remaining brass lightning bolt at the great stone vat. Doing so causes the solidified iron to immediately flash heat and melt. Elwyn is thrilled at the opportunity to use the bellows, keeping the iron hot while Yari and GORFTHISTLE fish the fabled sword out of the molten slag. Completely unaffected by the heat, its blade is razor sharp and forged from a metal unknown to Yari. According to legend, GORFTHISTLE explains, the sword was forged from the spines of the demon MULVIS himself. Then there is the scouring of the shrine. Guarded by the 7 remaining members of the cult of MULVIS, like prisoners in a chain gang, all gloops are put to work cleaning out every last trace of grease and soot from all parts of the dungeon. Yari returns to SOOTMURK's lair, determined to fish out his platinum ingot, which the grease dragon dropped into her pool of muck. During his search, the dwarf discovers an enormous hoard of treasure submerged in her puddle. Captain Gullion and his bodyguards are forced to completely remove all soot from the puddle and clean the hoard with water from the marsh. All told, the hoard includes 8,571 gold pieces, 6 opals worth 10 gold pieces each, 6 emeralds worth 50 gold pieces each, 9 sapphires worth 100 gold pieces each, 7 rubies worth 500 gold pieces each, a large diamond worth 1,000 gold pieces, a magic wand, 2 magic potions, a partially destroyed spell scroll inscribed with 5 spells. During this time, and with Angharad's assistance, Elwyn retrieves the murder victim shackled to the wall in the abandoned storeroom. They clean his body as best they can and wrap him in the old gnome cloaks from the automaton closet to prepare him for his homeward journey through the KELFREK marsh. Owen and Tarish return to the shrine 3 days after their departure, bringing with them 4 of Duke Ganelon's men-at-arms, 2 draft horses, and the 600 gold piece reward for capturing SOOTMURK. Once their labors in SOOTMURK's lair are completed, Captain Gullion and the remaining gloop guards are surrendered to the custody of Duke Ganelon's men-at-arms and depart the shrine in shackles. Gorfthistle makes the remaining gloops fill in the southern entrance to the shrine with stone to seal it off, leaving the large exhaust shaft as the only means of ingress. Thereafter, the gloops are permitted to depart freely, provided that they leave the KELFREK marsh and tell every gloop they meet that
the shrine of MULVIS is now guarded by the living dead.
The adventurers decide not to remove any of the items belonging to the remaining 7 members of the cult of MULVIS. Gorfthistle stations the cult in the exhaust shaft with instructions to
suffer no entry by any living being not now present.
Finally, there is the matter of transporting all the treasure, the total weight of which is nearly half a ton, back through the KELFREK marsh. Unaware of SOOTMURK's hoard when they left, Owen and Tarish did not bring saddlebags with them, nor could they navigate the cart Duke Ganelon gave them through the wetlands. The group must therefore stitch and string together all backpacks, sacks, and satchels into makeshift saddlebags to load on their 2 new draft horses. Muddy from their own journey through the KELFREK marsh, the draft horses are fine animals. Both shires, in their second year, they are massive steeds standing as high to the shoulder as Owen is tall. One is a gray mare named Blackwell, and the other is a bay gelding named Yeoman. They take little notice of the nearly 500 pounds of treasure awkwardly distributed to each of them in the adventurers' makeshift saddlebags along with the body of the gloop's human victim. Laden, they wend their way back through the marsh with the quiet stoicism for which their breed is renowned. When the party reaches the King's Road, Gorfthistle tells them that he intends to visit SOOTMURK,
for so long as it takes her to regurgitate or, otherwise expunge the crown of King Bombfluke.
For his share of the dragon's hoard, he takes 1,428 gold pieces and the large diamond, since the diamond is worth roughly 1/6 of the total value of all the gems. He also takes 100 gold pieces of Duke Ganelon's 600 gold piece reward and one of the 2 magic potions. He and Butch then depart, wishing the party safe roads until they meet again. With their second adventure behind them, the party returns the human victim's body to his kin and sees to the safe storage of their treasure. Thereafter they go their separate ways to see to personal affairs and, as Angharad put it back in the shrine of the Oozing Serpent,
have a thorough bath.
End of Adventure 2. Shrine of the Oozing Serpent.
Thanks so much again for joining us on Old School Epics. If you would like to try Shrine of the Oozing Serpent or play Old School Essentials, they're available at necroticgnome.com and exaltedfuneral.com. Here again, links to everything are down below. I hope you enjoyed listening to our actual play story. If you did, Please join us next time when our intrepid player characters brave the spine-rattling horrors at Chance Dudonac's Barrow of the Bone Blackguards. Until then, safe roads, my friends, and remember, there's no such thing as free loot in an old school dungeon.